All right. Well, we've got 32 folks. And Bob, if you would like to get started,
Sure.
anytime you're ready, go for it. If you'd like to start with a short introduction of yourself. I know a lot of Heartwood chapter members are familiar with you, but some of our interns are new to the
Right.
area or new to getting involved in environmentalism in this area. So it'd be great for them to get to know a little more about your background.
Okay. Uh, I am was a journalist for many years. Um, did a few other things. Worked, been all over the world, traveled, lived in many places. I am now retired. Um, the last thing I did was I set up and managed and operated the water conservation program for the Woodlands Township. Uh, our objective was to reduce the consumption of water from in the Woodlands. It was 200 gallons per person per day back in 2011. And I think it's right around 91 gallons per person per day now. And I think that's important because they're not making any more water. Um, and the water's never going to be as cheap as it is now. So the objective was sound, I think. Um, and we were awarded uh, the Water Development, Texas Water Development Board Blue Legacy Award, which was it's a real coveted award that we kind of set the stage, I think, for what's been happening all over the country now that people are actually copying our program all over the nation now, which is a real honor for us. Um, I am a master naturalist, master gardener, and a member of the Native Plant Society of Texas, the Pines and Prairies chapter. And I've been doing this for many years. I have a website that I operate. It's not a website to make money. It's a website to inform people. And I think I have the address on here somewhere. Anyway, I am very dedicated and very interested in our natural resources. And it's important, I think, for us to understand where we're headed and where we are now and where we're headed and what the positive things we can do now, not only to improve the planet and improve our environment, but also to educate other people. And I think that's one of our goals as master naturalist is to uh, inform other people, to educate other people, and where we stand now and how we can improve our environment and actually save our environment in many instances. I grew up in Louisiana, South Louisiana, on a farm, and we had a lot of woods, and I spent a lot of time as a kid wandering through the woods. I did some hunting, but mostly I just did wandering. And I was every fall I would go through the woods and I would see all these leaves falling on the ground. I couldn't understand why they didn't just stay there because I'd go in the fall and they'd all be on the ground and I'd come back in the springtime and they were all gone. I mean, where did they go? They should have piled up feet feet high, many feet high as the years progressed, but they didn't. So I started thinking about it and it occurred to me that something natural was happening in all of that. Um, and so I started doing some investigation into it and kind of this is what I've come up with. And I call it soil, the living layer of earth. And the French theologian Teilhard de Chardin wrote a book called The Phenomenon of Man. And in that book, he said that man is the living layer of earth. I think he was talking about the spiritual realm, but I'm talking about the natural realm. And instead of man being the living layer of earth, in the natural realm, soil is the living layer of earth. And I'm going to try to explain this to you, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask any questions you have. You can put it on your chat, and I'll try to get to it at the end of the presentation. So let's go on and talk a little bit more about this. We walk on soils, but we don't often give thought to what's right under our feet. Uh, Soils are the world's breadbasket. They provide food, host of other necessities, including new medicines and materials. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. No soil, no life. It provides really a host of crucial services for both people and for the planet. It puts food on our plates, purifies our water, protects us against flooding. Uh, right now, it may be a problem, and combats drought. And I have a whole presentation about flooding. Uh, I think that the more construction and creation of impermeable surfaces, like in subdivisions and mini malls and things like that, uh, or highways, are contributing to what we're seeing now, the flooding and other things. That and other several other things like overuse of water, which is drawing down the aquifers, which are sinking, but that's another story altogether. So these are some of the things that soil does, but it's also key to tackling our climate change. Uh, it captures and stores vast amounts of carbon, and we have to admit there's no food security without healthy soils. It's something that's necessary. So if you would, take a minute and think about this analogy. We're in the African savannah, and there's millions of wildebeests trekking through the savannah, going from one area to another, migrating. And on the way, they're migrating, they're eating the grasses in the savannah, and they're multiplying. They're fertilizing the earth as they go along, and they travel hundreds of miles across the savannah. But they are just one element in this whole process of the life cycle. We also see that along the way of these wildebeests, we have lions and other predators, which are living along there, but they're very few. They're much fewer than all the wildebeests that are driving across the plains. But their job is to keep the wildebeest herds in check. And that's the process. The process is really no different in the soil. The soil also does other things, or the process does other things, and I'll explain those to you. First of all, let's look at an ideal soil condition. We have at the top 5% organic matter, 45% minerals, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Water, 25%, air, 25%. So, and then the 5% organic matter. That is an ideal soil condition. And if you really look in a forest, for instance, you're going to find something very close to this, or into a natural element, a natural field, or a pasture, or actually a native field, a field full of native plants. You're going to find this kind of structure in the soil. So eons ago, wind, rain, cold, heat, and other elements eroded rock from mountain and other natural structures and created minerals. So you see, we went from rock, from mountains to rocks to gravel to small gravel to sand, and finally to what we call dirt, not soil, dirt. This is just minerals that have been eroded from uh, rock formations for eons. Now, these minerals are important. They're important to soil. They're important to all living things. We need these minerals as well as humans. Uh, so here's 13 minerals that are necessary to plant growth. And these minerals all come that are in the soil all come from erosions from rocks and mountains, rock structures. So we have nitrogen, extremely important, phosphorus, and potassium. When you buy a bag of fertilizer, for instance, in the United States, the law requires them to have a NPK on the label, and the amount of each one of these three elements in on that listed on that bag. But we also have secondary macronutrients that plants need that are incredibly important: magnesium, sulfur, calcium. We also have micronutrients: boron, iron, manganese, copper, zinc, molybdenum, and chromium. I hope you're all taking notes because we're going to have a test on this, and I'm going to ask you to name all these. No, just kidding. Air. Let's talk about air. Plants need three gases: oxygen, that's used in aerobic respiration, food molecules broken down to release energy for growth. Carbon monoxide is used in carbon dioxide. It's my secretary, whose name is Bob, uh, made a mistake here. Carbon dioxide is used in photosynthesis, where the sun's energy is hardest to make food. And finally, nitrogen. It plays a critical role to ensure that energy is really available for the plant to optimize its yield. So let's go. Water in the soil, the medium from which all plant nutrients are assimilated by the plants. And that is a total necessity. Nitrogen sources. And here's something very interesting. I think you'll find this interesting. Plants cannot take in nitrogen from the air, although it's one of the major sources of growth that a plant needs to produce food. It cannot take it in from the air, even though nitrogen is the most common gas on the planet. Can't take it in through the air. There are only four ways that it can take it, that plants can take in nitrogen. One is nitrogen fixation from free-living bacteria in the soil. I'm going to talk about that a little later. Two, from bacteria living symbiotically uh, uh, in nodules on the roots of legumes, which are beans or peas. They fix nitrogen into the soil. From nitrogen-infused rain, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and from fertilizer. Let's talk about this one thing, nitrogen-infused rain, which I find fascinating, incredibly fascinating. Whoops. When nitrogen, where did I go here? When nitrogen, when lightning strikes, for instance, in the past few days, lightning fuses a molecule of water, of H2O, with one atom of nitrogen. It's a chemical fusion that happens as lightning strikes. So lightning hits these little droplets of water and infuses those droplets of water with nitrogen. The nitrogen falls to the ground and as part of the rainwater, which is it's now a nitrate, and hits the soil and goes down into the soil and then is taken up by the roots of the plants. You know, people after a rain, people say, "Oh, everything looks so green, must have washed all the dust off." But that's not what happens. The nitrogen infused rain has gone down into the roots of the plants, and all of a sudden, bang, everything greens up very quickly. I think it's almost magic, and I think it's really beautiful to see that process. But it is a process. And before we had uh, mechanical watering systems, this was one of the only ways that plants could receive water, could receive nitrogen. Let's talk about something else now. Let's talk about organic matter. Organic matter in the soil. Here's what we're talking about: residue and living microbes, which are really essential in soil. Organic matter in the soil. Let's talk about that. Active organic matter is also referred to as detritus. And here's something interesting. You see this nice kind of rich looking soil. There's an earthworm in there, several earthworms in there. And that is soil that has become, detritus that has become soil. Organic matter in the soil, stable soil organic matter is referred to as humus. And let's see how that works, okay? How that whole process happens. Let's say we have a plant, and I'm going to use my cursor here. Here's a plant here, and all of a sudden it drops its leaves. Normal. The leaves go down and lay on the ground, and certain organisms start to work on it. First of all, fungi and bacteria uh, start to break down this plant residue. Then they are eaten by protists, which are protozoas, amoebas, paramecium. Then the fungi is also eaten by fungal feeding mites, and other things, eventually getting to bigger plants, bigger animals, and then finally earthworms, soil-dwelling higher-level predators, and top-level predators like birds. But you see the relationship, how soil, what's living below the earth, below the level of the top of the soil, actually is very similar to what's above the soil. You have prey, you have food sources, you have prey, you have predators, and those predators have more predators. So you see the whole process here. And then finally, you have the end users, which are, I guess you would consider them the lions. Detrivores. Let's talk about the detrivores. And this is what I'm talking about here. These are detrivores. All of these things eat detritus, which is the remnants of plants, the leaves and roots and logs and everything else that falls in. So here we have sow bugs and pill bugs. I know you played with them as a kid. You know, they roll up in little balls. They're kind of nice. Millipedes, totally harmless, but they eat detritus. They eat leaves. They decaying leaves. They'll eat decaying, rotting wood. That's what they do. Slugs and snails also do the same thing. Don't like them, but they do the same thing. Springtails, you know, it's interesting. I have a compost pile. I was compost you turn every so often. I was turning my compost, and all of a sudden I see this little centipede about this long run out from under a pile that I was turning with my pitchfork. And I looked under where he emerged, and there were a bunch of springtails. Well, the centipede is the lion. The springtails, which are eating the detritus, were the wildebeests, And the detritus was the grass on the savanna. That's kind of the how that relationship works and how it's above, as is below, above is below. Earthworms. Earthworms are totally incredible producers of good soil. Uh, Earthworms, soil aeration, they aerate the soil. They make these vertical tunnels in the soil, which allow water and air and nutrients to come down into the soil and enrich it and enliven it with bacteria. Because what they eat, what earthworms eat, they pass it through their gut, inoculate it with bacteria, and then pass it out into the soil. That bacteria is what makes rich soil. So here we have a football stadium. That's about an acre of land. The average earthworm produces its own weight in castings every 24 hours. And the USDA says that earthworms on 1 acre of land can bring to the surface over 20 tons, 40,000 pounds of soil in 1 year. So they're constantly enriching that soil, turning it over. Incredibly important. I tell people who have gardens or having problems with their lawns that if they have earthworms, they have good soil because they both go hand in hand. Charles Darwin, who wrote Origin of the Species, also wrote a book called The Formation of Vegetable Mold through the Action of Worms with observations on their habitat. And this book actually was written after Origin of the Species, and it was a better seller than Origin of the Species during the time. And what he would do is he would go out in the daytime, Charles Darwin would go out in the daytime and find these holes, which the earthworms had created, these vertical holes. And he'd take little bits of leaves and he'd put one down by each hole. And then at night he'd go out with a lantern. They didn't have electricity, and he'd watch the earthworms come up and take that little piece of leaf and bring it back down into the hole. Well, what they were doing is they were passing all that in from the worms were passing that uh, those nutrients through its stomach and inoculating it with bacteria and passing it out into the soil and creating new soil. And terribly, terribly important. So, I mean, if we look at this, all of our food, everything we eat, except maybe marine animals, although there is a relationship there too, comes from the soil. I mean, there's no way around that. All the fruit we eat, all the vegetables we eat, and even the animals we eat cannot survive without the soil. So these are important things, I think, that we need to link when we're talking about plants, we're talking about animals, we're talking about humans, that this is an important link, probably the most important link, good soil and whatever else lives around it, including us. So let's look at these. These are some let's go back. Microbic predators in the soil. We have a whole bunch of them here. These are all centipedes, spider mites. These are some ants here, and ants have a role. This is a little tiny centipede here. So let's talk about beneficial microbes. Bacteria, protozoa, roundworms, those are all things that exist in the soil. Soil bacteria, for instance. Soil bacteria changes the soil environment so that plant species can exist and proliferate. If you don't have bacteria in your soil, dead soil, you can't have life in it. You can't grow anything in it. uh, plants can't survive. You know, one of the real problems that I see, I have tested probably hundreds of lawns in Montgomery County. People call me up, and I don't do it anymore because it's taking up too much of my time. But I've checked so many of those lawns, and to a single lawn, every one of them, the soil was so hard that I couldn't dig up a sample to take and look at the roots at in a microscope to tell what the problem was. You know, say, oh, my grass is turning yellow. Well, let's then look and see what's going on. The problem was the soil was dead. St. Augustine grass should have roots this deep. Their roots were this deep. Why? They Because they were overwatering. Too much water. I mean, it's like all of us. If we drink too much water, we're going to die. Uh, Chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides on the soil has killed all the bacteria, all the living life in the soil, and there's nothing left. It's just rock, little bits of rock. And the grass certainly can't penetrate it. I'm not a big fan of grass. Maybe if you know that. Lawns, that is. You know, there are 4 million acres of lawns in the state of Texas. You can't eat it. It's the fourth largest crop. You can't eat it. You can't wear it. And if you're so inclined, you can't smoke it. So what do? You put down this green carpet and then you kill the soil under it. It absolutely makes no sense. It has no purpose. So anyway, that's my preaching. I'll stop. But what?
I didn't understand.
Yes, what?
I did. Are you saying that lawns are no good?
I'm saying that lawns are harmful to the environment. They have really, I don't see any purpose for them. I took all the lawn out of my yard. I have nothing but native plants in my yard. Uh, Although I do have a vegetable garden in the backyard, but I just don't see the purpose of them. You know, it's grass. I mean, why would I want to do that? You know, a century ago, nobody had lawns in the United States. They had vegetable gardens or fruit trees or, you know, other things in their front yard. Uh, Now it's changed significantly because I don't know why, but I'm not a big fan of lawns. They serve, I don't know what purpose they serve, you know. So anyway,
So
yes.
how do you propose changing lawn into a vegetable garden
Well,
or native plants?
let me finish my presentation and then we'll talk, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Um, so anyway, soil bacteria can change the soil environment so that plant species can exist and proliferate. They recycle nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus, and other nutrients. Excuse me. Protozoas. Protozoas eat back. They're the lions. They're the main lions in the food chain in the soil. Protozoas. They eat bacteria, help distribute nutrients, and do a whole lot of other things that are important. Nematodes, tiny microscopic worms that help distribute bacteria and fungi throughout the soils and along the roots. Actinomycetes. Now, here's something very interesting. Actinomycetes is a special um, genus of bacteria. It's a special bacteria genus, and there are many species of it. This is what they make tetracycline, streptomycin, erythromycin, all the antibiotics that we have, or most of them, are made from actinomycetes that are found in the soil. Now, scientists have found that there is a specific species of actinomycetes that lives in the soil that can actually penetrate the skin. And it penetrates the skin, gets into your bloodstream, goes up and enters your brain and releases serotonin, which has a calming effect. That's why you see gardeners smiling all the time, because they're getting their hands dirty and getting all those actinomycetes. This is a true story. I'm not making this up. This is real. Okay. So if you want to be a good gardener and have good soil and get some actinomycetes in your hands, and you'll be very happy. Anyway, fungi, mycorrhizal fungi. This is something that the study started about 2013, not very many years ago, but 11 years ago. And what they found out that mycorrhizal fungi collects nutrients from the soil and brings them to plants in exchange for food, for sugars. And they act as extensions of the root system, but they do something much more important. One of the things that they do, or the most important thing that they do, is that one strain of mycorrhizal fungi will populate. It can go up to 40, 50 acres, square acres of plants. And it will know that, it won't know, but let's say one area of the 40 acres has no nutrients or very few, and another area of that 40 acres, 40 square acres, has nutrients. These plants over here will say to the mycorrhizal fungi, which has also integrated those plants into its system, it will tell the mycorrhizal fungi, hey, we don't have any nutrients over here. The mycorrhizal fungi will bypass all of those other plants and bring nutrients to those plants. And scientists are still trying to figure out how they do it. They think it's probably electronic, or maybe some kind of chemical process, or some kind of photosynthetic. They don't know. They're struggling right now to find out. There's a great book by Suzanne Simard called "Finding the Mother Tree." She's a scientist and worked in the Pacific Northwest of Canada, and did this incredible study on the mycorrhizal fungi in forests. And she found that 40 square miles of forest were connected by this one mycorrhizal fungal species. It's fantastic. It's almost magical what's happening there. And I love the idea of it. I think it's just marvelous. So here's what mycorrhizal fungi looks like. This is just one plant, one fungal, and it's spread all over the place. Let's look at large predators: rove beetles, centipedes, predatory mites. How are we doing with time? Okay. Predatory mites, fire ants. I have fire ants sometimes in my compost, and they're predators. They're going to break down some stuff, and they're going to eventually, their little bodies are going to die. They don't bother me that much. I don't like them in my yard because kids can wander in there, pets and everything, or me. So I try to, if I have a lot of trouble with them, I'll take a shovel, try to dig up the mound, throw it over the fence in my neighbor's yard. No, seriously, I don't do that. Conditioning the soil. Let's talk about that. Lawn aeration. So if you do want a lawn, you have to aerate it, because you have to have oxygen, water, nutrients into the soil. You can't just throw it on top and expect it to go down. So you have to aerate, you have to put compost on it, you have to care for it. So roots before, as you can see, oxygen, water, nutrients, and after. You just don't pour stuff on there and expect for it to get into the soil. So even if you do have a lawn, which I don't, but even if you do have a lawn, you need to understand that the roots are just as important as the top. I mean, these are just leaves. These are the most important parts down here, the roots. So if you have a lawn and you want to keep a lawn, then this is the way to do it. And here's some lawn operations here. This is a little sheep's foot, they call it. And what it does, it takes these little divots out of the soil, and there are plenty of them that you can use. You can rent them, and then put compost on it. And this is compost. Compost is really decayed matter, decayed vegetation that is rich in nutrients and rich in microbes. And spread it out on your soil, on your lawn. And this guy's got a nice lawn. And he just raked it out. Watering, how much did you water your lawn? Too much water is bad, it's too little water. Use a screwdriver. Take an 8-inch screwdriver and stick it in the ground. If it goes up to the hilt, then you probably have enough water in your soil. Okay. The problem is if it doesn't go down, your soil is probably too compacted and you don't need more water, you need to air it. Mulch. Let's talk about mulch for a minute. Mulch is very important for any plants. And the reason why it's important, and a lot of this is done for residential use. Mulch is important because it conserves moisture in the soil, especially for your plants, your ornamental plants. It increases the yield, regulates the soil temperature. It lessens the crop loss, helps prevent fungal infections. Organic mulch also enriches the soil as it breaks down, and that's one of the most important things, that it breaks down. Mulch should break down. Because you want it to become part of the soil. So you want to always be adding more mulch to your soil and to your plants. That's important. Trees need mulch. All of these plants need mulch, all of your ornamentals. Please do not use dyed mulch. In 2003, prior to 2003, mulch, a lot of mulch was made with wood that was treated with chromium copper arsenate, which is arsenic. And what unscrupulous providers of mulch would do was they grind up these treated lumber pieces and then dye them so you wouldn't recognize what was in it with and so what you were doing was putting that colored mulch on your lawn, or on, excuse me, not on your lawn, but on your potted plants or your lawn plants, your ornamentals, and you're actually putting poison on your lawn. So, well, in 2003, it was banned by the EPA, the chromium copper arsenate. So any treated lumber you buy now is not treated with the chromium copper arsenate. However, there are millions of old decks and fences and loading pallets that are still left over from people tearing down houses and stuff like that. And there are still producers who take this old lumber that has chromium copper arsenate in it, chopping it up and dyeing it. And people are putting it on their plants. What they're doing is spreading arsenic on their yards. And if they have children, the children are running through it. If they have pets, the pets are running through it, or the grandchildren are running through it and bringing it back in the house. Not a good idea. Don't buy colored mulch. Buy organic mulch. The other thing I saw with colored mulch is that colored mulch does not disintegrate. And the whole purpose of having mulch is eventually to have it disintegrate and become part of the soil, increasing the richness and the value of the soil. Anyway, Don't use these products, please. You know, the glyphosate, which is the major thing of these, the major substance in these, glyphosate is the third generation from Agent Orange. Agent Orange is what we used in Vietnam to defoliate. Okay. I just had a friend of mine die of kidney disease, who was in special forces in Vietnam, and he was exposed to Agent Orange. The second one was 2,4-D. So you have Agent Orange, and then the derivative of Agent Orange is 2,4-D, and the derivative of 2,4-D is glyphosate. And it has already been shown to cause kidney disease. In the United States, it's banned in Europe and Canada, so you can't use it there. Anyway, so please try not to use this. You're poisoning the atmosphere. Get your soil tested. You can go to Texas A&M soil lab. You'll just go to this website right here and get your soil tested, whether it's in your lawn or in your garden or in your vegetable garden, even in your potted plants. Get your soil tested so you know what's in there and you know what you may need to add in there. And here's some resources. We're going to end a little early. Texas Month by Month Gardening by Skip Richter. Skip has retired now, and he's now doing he's taken Randy Lemon's place at the radio station up there and down there in Houston. Texas Home Landscaping by Greg Grant. Native Texas Gardens by Sally and Andy Wasowski, great book. Texas Garden Almanac by Doug Welch. This next book, Year-Round Vegetables, Fruits, and Flowers from Metro Houston, A Natural Organic Approach Using Ecology by Dr. Bob Randall. And it is a fantastic book, and it's full of information, websites, all kinds of stuff that it's amazing how much it's got in there. Teaming with Microbes by Jeff Lowenfels and Wayne Lewis, great book. Teaming with Fungi by Jeff Lowenfels, also a great book. And in there, he talks about the mycorrhizal fungi, which I talked about. Mycorrhizal Planet by Michael Phillips. Michael Phillips has an apple orchard up in New Hampshire, I believe. And he's also a soil scientist. And what he did was he studied the mycorrhizal, he's been studying this to increase mycorrhizal fungi to increase the yield in his apple orchard. And it worked amazing. And he wrote a book about it. Finding the Mother Tree, I mentioned Suzanne Simard, and Bringing Nature Home by Doug Tallamy. Good book, great book. And all of these are something you may want to read. And here are some resources. There's the soil testing. There's my website, gulfcoastgardening.com, and Lazy Gardener and Friends by Brenda Buse Smith. And that's my presentation. Now I think we have some questions. I'll be happy to answer any of them. Somebody had a question about a lawn. I'll be happy. I'm going to go home and look at all these.
Yes, I did. How do I make my lawn into a garden?
Well, it depends on where you live. You can do it in your backyard. You may have a problem if you live in a subdivision. You may have a problem with your HOA putting it in the front yard. However, if I don't know where you live, do you live in the woodlands or do you live elsewhere?
In the woodlands.
Okay. The woodlands requires you to have at least 40% of your yard in native plants. Okay. So I know lots of people in the woodlands who have 100% of their yard planted in native plants. and there's a lot of them. But you probably need to check with I have a friend of mine who planted a hedge around his entire yard, and in there, he's inside the hedge, he's got a garden. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just suggesting there are creative ways to do something like that. So you may want to check that out. Uh, Otherwise, you need to check with your HOAs.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. But how do I go about making it?
Making a garden,
Yes.
uh, you need to you probably need to take one of my other classes on putting a garden together, or some classes that they're doing over at Extension Service. They have some classes on there about gardening, uh, and I have some articles about it as well. But I don't know what kind of garden you want. I mean, it'd be, it's not something I would have time to explain to you right here, but I mean, it takes a lot of explanation to do that. So, if you want to, you can certainly email me or look at my website. Go to my website. You can find some stuff on there that has, that
Okay.
has information about gardening. Does that answer your question? Does that help you a little
Thank you.
bit? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Let me check some other questions here.
I can go through some of these questions.
Yes.
One, let's see, the first question we got, can you import or buy local earthworms for insertion into your yard?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Can you import slash buy local earthworms for insertion into your yard?
No. Okay. That's kind of a misconception that people have. There are earthworms that you can buy, and they're called red wigglers. And people buy them to create worm compost. If you put the red wigglers in the soil, they die. They have to be kept indoors. They have to be kept at a constant temperature all year round. Um, and they have to be kept in a container. Now, I raised some for many years, but they kept escaping from I built a tub for them to live in, but it was sealed, I thought. But evidently it wasn't sealed as well as I thought it was, and they kept escaping, so I had to take it out from under my desk and stop raising worms. However, if you have good soil, the worms will come. The native earthworms, the natural earthworms that live in the soil, they will find you and they will come. You don't have to worry about that. However, if you want to do something like spread compost on your lawn, or use good compost, I make my own. Then those earthworm eggs will probably be in that compost. So if you get good compost, there are several places you can get very good compost, good organic compost, that probably has earthworm eggs in it. And that's what I would do. Add compost in there. They will come. You'll have earthworms. If you have earthworms, you have good soil. And that's the only way to do it.
Okay, let's see. A lot of questions about the mycorrhizal fungi. So
Yeah.
does adding mycorrhizal fungi, powdered, etc., work to help the soil?
How does it work to help the soil? Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, so I think the question is, can you add it to help your soil? Like if it comes in a powdered form?
Yes, you can buy that. You can actually buy it to a lot of the garden centers have it. I know that I'm pretty sure Ace Hardware carries it. You can buy it online. Um, uh, yeah, you can definitely do it. Now, that's kind of a generic mycorrhizal fungi, but it definitely works. It definitely works. And yeah, I know Plants for All Seasons in Tomball carries it. I know that Arborgate carries it. I know that the Allspa's Ace in the Woodlands carries it. I know those three do carry it.
Okay, and then another one is mycorrhizal fungi useful on, only useful when planting the original plant as an amendment to the soil under the roots, or can we add on top / around the plant to further feed the roots in year 1, 2, 3, etc.?
Oh, okay. Once you set the mycorrhizal fungi in the soil, it will uh, continue to grow and proliferate. However, if you disturb the soil, in other words, if you keep digging the soil up, it will expose the mycorrhizal fungi to the sun and to open air, and it will die. So the best thing to do is once you establish it in the soil, uh, try not to disturb the soil. I use my vegetable gardens, I use no-till gardening. I don't disturb my soil. I just keep adding compost on top and planting into that compost. And the next year when I harvest the crops, I leave the roots in. I take more compost, put it on, and do that. I do not till any of my plants. I don't do it. Even my ornamentals, I don't till. I just leave them in the ground and just keep adding mulch or compost onto them and let the mycorrhizal fungi do its thing. Because once you expose it to the air, including bacteria, the good bacteria in the soil, once you expose them to the air and the sunlight, they will die. So that's the environment they live in and grow in is the darkness of the soil, not sunshine or air. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but Gretchen asks, would you address grazon or grazon? I think this came up when you were talking about Roundup and glyphosate.
Oh, would I do what now? Say about it?
Would you address grazon? Um,
Razon, Razon?
Garzon. And Gretchen, if you'd like to clarify, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, please, Gretchen.
Uh,
Gretchen. She on the iPhone, I think. She's on the.
Hello, I'm here. I'm
Oh,
here.
hi, Gretchen.
Okay, so Grazon is an herbicide that doesn't break down.
Yeah, I'm
And
not familiar with it, but I can check it for you. Um, I will check it.
you're not familiar with that herbicide that they put on grass and cows can eat it, but then if you use the hay or the manure, it'll kill your garden.
Oh, never heard of it.
They,
Grazon.
oh,
I'm
okay.
checking it now. Hold on a second.
Grazon.
we don't have a whole lot of cows in the Woodlands area, so I don't know if
No.
it's come up a whole lot in our neighborhoods.
This herbicide carries over to hay, manure, compost, and grass clippings. I'm really concerned about it.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I don't, yeah,
Grazon,
I have it. Yeah.
aminopyrrolate.
Oh, it looks like, if I'm reading this right, it's just a new generation of, of the, other stuff of glyphosate. I'm not sure, but there are so many destructive and dangerous herbicides and pesticides out there. It's almost impossible to
I'm
keep up.
reading a lot of stories how people will put this hay on their garden and it just
Yeah.
remains in the soil for up to 3 years.
Oh my
And
God.
I'm dealing with that myself. So
Well,
I thought it was I thought it was wider known.
No, I never heard of it, but I just looked it up and I will do some research on it. That's very interesting. Um, and so they're chemical companies are interesting. They're very inventive. So uh, we'll have to see what happens, but I will check it out. And if you, I can, Rebecca, I can get it to you if
And
Yeah,
thanks for the
absolutely.
wonderful list of resources also.
I'm sorry.
Thanks for the wonderful list of resources.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Can we put it back on the screen?
Yes, we've had a request to show the resources slide so everybody can copy
Show the
this.
what? I'm sorry.
The resources slide.
Oh, sure.
The book list.
Perfect. Okay, Terry MacArthur is in the chat and she wanted to clarify the Woodlands has no requirement for turf grass lawns. Natives are strongly suggested and required to be an equal or higher percentage of plantings.
There you go.
That's
Thank
good
you,
news.
Terry.
Terry's the expert here. She just spoke at our class about 2 weeks ago. Okay, let's
Terry
see.
was my teacher when I first took the Master Naturals course. So yeah.
That's good. Good group. Okay, lots of great
Can,
comments.
can we get the website?
The next slide, you mean?
The next
Yes,
slide, yes. Sorry.
thank you.
Okay, here's a question. I think it's a joke, but maybe you'll appreciate it.
All
Can
right.
you buy the actinomycete, I
Yeah.
don't remember how to say that create the serotonin smiley face?
No, it's in the soil. It's a natural actinomycetes. I don't know. I imagine some medical lab might be growing it in a test tube somewhere, but I don't know how you would find it to add it to the soil. It's probably already in the soil. So I would say just go, don't wear gloves, just dig your hands in the soil and it will. That's why you see gardeners when you sneak up behind them and you surprise them and they turn around, they're smiling. Well, they've been digging in the soil. You know, they've got their their dose of actinomycetes for the day. So yeah, I I don't I have no idea about that. I know that scientists have reproduced the bacteria in the labs, of course, and that's where they're making all their antibiotics now. They're not just go digging it up in the soil. They're reproducing it in chemical in laboratories.
I think the person wants to get the happiness without working in the garden.
Yeah, that's true. Just go dig in the garden.
Yeah, Eddie, you can come dig in my garden. I've got work to do. I think those are the only questions I'm finding. If we can, let's see, I'm sure your contact information's on the Gulf Coast Gardening site.
It is, yes.
Great, just in
I
case
can give you
anyone
my
has
I can
follow-ups.
give you my email. It's if you'd like.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Okay, it's Bob Dailey, Dailey dot Gulf Coast Gardening at gmail.com.
Okay, and I've just posted that to the chat as well.
Right.
So everybody has your direct contact information. You might get, let's see, how many people do we have? 30 something messages here soon. So get ready. We've got an active group.
Okay, that's great.
And so your presentation is next as well. As if this one wasn't enough, that was so much great information. Do you want to take a short break and then come back to it?
Yeah, that would give me a chance to set it up.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll do come back at about, do you think 9:10 is good?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. I'm back. We're going to talk about native plants today and the importance of them and how they relate to our existence as human beings, not only on the planet, but also here Um, let's see. Well, trying to get this working. Here we go. Okay. I don't know how many of you been to Lady Bird Johnson's Lady Bird Johnson Wildlife Center in Austin. Now is the time to go if you haven't been there. Might be a good field trip for the master naturalist to take some people on. We went, a bunch of us went one day. We drove over there, had lunch, visited the garden, and then came back. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. It's full of acres and acres of wonderful native plants, and they're all blooming now. So it's a great time to go. So if you get a chance, go there. But Lady Bird Johnson did some really interesting things here in Texas, in the state of Texas, for native plants, and now this center is known throughout the world. They have a great website called wildflower.org, and what they what that website has is you can research on there. They have every plant native to North America, with photographs, growing instructions, all kinds of stuff. So it's a great, great site. The other site is Native Plant Society of Texas. They also have much, much information about native plants. So you may go to both of those to check them out. What are native plants? Native plants are those plants that occur naturally in a region where they have evolved. And the important thing is evolved. For instance, why do we want native? Well, why do we want native plants? Why are they necessary? Well, they're the basis, the ecological basis for which all life depends here. Includes birds, insects, wildlife, us. Without native plants and the insects that co-evolved with them, in other words, our native plants that exist right here around us, that co-evolved with them, the local birds, the beneficial insects, they cannot survive. We need native plants in order for all these insects, local birds, to survive. And it goes farther than that, but let's just look at this thing right here. Native oak trees support over 500 species of caterpillars. Caterpillars are the larval form of a butterfly or a moth. When it takes over 6,000 caterpillars to raise one brood of chickadees, that's important. A chickadee nest is about this big. The eggs are about this big for chickadees. 6,000 caterpillars to raise one clutch of chickadee eggs. That's totally fantastic to me. Right now it's interesting because it's springtime, birds are nesting. I have barn swallows nesting above my front door. I have a mockingbird in the backyard in my Peggy Morton rose. I have a doves nesting in my daylilies, and I have some wrens nesting in my coral honeysuckle. To me, it's beautiful. They have nests, they're raising birds. I have we have 4 different kinds of doves here, always in my backyard. We have butterflies, moths, just beautiful, beautiful creatures. And they're all because we support native plants. Benefits of native plants are fantastic, particularly for us humans. Low maintenance, really low maintenance for them. I mean, they have been here for eons before humans ever set foot on this continent. I mean, we're talking, you know, what, at least 30,000 years ago when the first people crossed the land bridge into North America. Those plants existed here already. They were here. And all of the insects that co-evolved with them are here. And all of the birds that relied on those insects were here. So they're beautiful. They have showy flowers, colorful, abundant fruits and seeds. They create a really healthy environment for people. Lawns are notorious for requiring large amounts of artificial fertilizers, synthetic pesticides, and herbicides. The traditional suburban lawn, on average, uses 10 times more chemical pesticides per acre than farmland. And as I said before, there are 4 million acres of lawns in the state of Texas. And many, many more in the United States, many millions more in the United States. By using natives, we're creating a healthier place for us, for our families, and for our communities. Native plants help the climate because they help prevent climate change. They combat it. In addition to reduce noise and carbon pollution from lawnmower exhausts. And interesting, lawnmower exhausts they have no catalytic converters on them. They create more pollution than cars do. Amazing. Many native plants, especially long-living trees like oaks, maples, are effective at storing greenhouse gas carbon dioxide, conserving water. Native plants are adapted to local conditions. So I know there's many beautiful plants out there that are brought in from other areas, from other countries, from other continents. Unfortunately, they are not adapted to local conditions. Only our own native plants are adapted to our conditions. Native plants need less water, saving time, saving money, and the most valuable resource, water. Yeah, I can't say enough about native plants. They provide a vital habitat for food sources for birds and mammals and humans. I mean, who doesn't like to go out and pick dewberries, wild dewberries, or blackberries? Or when we were kids, we used to go out and pick maypops, which is passion fruit, and to make jelly. I mean, I remember all these things, and I'm sure some of you may as well. Let's talk about where we are in this scheme of things. There are probably about 100 different ecoregions in the state of Texas. We're a very diverse state, but let's look at Montgomery County. This is Montgomery County right here. Now, as you can see, there are three different colored areas, shaded areas in Montgomery County. And these are three different ecoregions that exist here. And in those three different ecoregions, there are three types of native plants that live here. And what has happened is they have actually crossed over into these three areas. But the three areas are this kind of purple violet is called the Flatwoods ecoregion in Texas. The green area here is the southern tertiary uplands. And this little bit here, which is where we would have been at, is part of the Fayette Prairie, the Fayette Blacklands Prairie, which is right around Lake Conroe, just a little west of it, Lake Conroe. So we have three different serious ecoregions here that are converging in Montgomery County, which makes it a real diverse area. The land structure is different. The soil structure is different in each of these regions. They're quickly becoming overcome because of development. I mean, everywhere you look now in Montgomery County, you see development. So what people are doing is building impermeable structures with, garages and homes and driveways and roads and shopping centers and gas stations and everything else. So we're slowly, or actually quickly changing this whole structure here. However, there are some native areas still existing in Montgomery County. Now, there are over 400 species of butterflies that call Texas home at least part of the year. I saw yellow swallowtail out in my back compost yesterday afternoon after the rain. It was beautiful, big butterfly. And those are one of the 400 species that of butterflies. I have a lot of milkweed planted. I have not seen one monarch. I know some people have seen some, and some people have seen the larvae on their milkweeds. I haven't seen any larvae this year, and a lot of people are telling me they haven't. A few people have said they've seen some. People like Hugh Wedgeworth, who is a real butterfly aficionado. Hugh and Diane have seen some and found them. And several other people have told me the same thing. But other than that, Hugh's a member of this society, the Master Naturalists. The insects have actually co-evolved with our native plants. They rely on native plants for food, as a food source for their larvae. For instance, monarchs will take their nectar from many plants, but the larvae of monarchs can only survive on milkweed. And that's a real interesting thing, because the monarch butterfly, needs to lay its eggs on a milkweed plant, a native milkweed, in order for the larvae to hatch and survive and pupate. So we're seeing an incredible decline of monarch butterflies. And the reason for that is that we have destroyed a whole lot of their habitat, not only for food, but in Mexico, they're cutting down all the trees that they migrate to. So, it's a serious problem here. The other thing is there are at least 1,100 species of native bees in Texas. 75%, maybe more, of native plant species rely on native bees for pollination. As we kill off the native bees by not having native plants for them to survive on, then all the crops, then we're seriously limiting our ability. In all crops in Texas, native bees are the primary pollinators. We lose the native bees, honeybees can't do the whole job. If we lose our native bees, we have a serious problem on crops, because honeybees can't do the whole job. We need the native bees. They are the primary pollinator. Don't overlook the role native plants have on aquatic life. Native plants slow the rain down and runoff from filter pollutants through their root systems. Healthy native plant populations help create healthy fish. Native plants along the shoreline reduces toxins that enter a waterway. For instance, I'll give you some examples. They warn pregnant women not to eat fish caught in the northern parts of Galveston Bay. And the reason for that is there is incredible runoff of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides into our rivers and streams, which all end up into Galveston Bay. There's still DDT in the silt in Galveston Bay. DDT, which was banned how many years ago? There's still DDT there. When I lived in Louisiana, I was chairman of the Mineral Board, which is the same for 4 years. It's the same thing as the Texas Railroad Commission here. And we had a big to do in New Orleans about the Lake Pontchartrain was losing its fish. The water was polluted, and people were saying, "Oh, well, it's the oil companies that are doing that," and because they had a lot of drilling operations out there. So we initiated a study by LSU to find out what the cause of the pollution was in Lake Pontchartrain, which is a very large lake. Anyway, so we did the study and we found out several things. One, the oil field was producing a little pollution, some. The largest polluter was runoff from lawns in the state from the city of New Orleans, the very biggest by far, and that was from lawn chemicals being washed into the water. And we're seeing the same thing happen in Galveston Bay. It's incredible how much chemicals are used, much more than farmers use. Farmers are very, very meticulous with their anything they use for pesticides or herbicides, but homeowners are not. We are the biggest polluters in the world. So as far as for chemicals are concerned. So anyway, it's my little speech. Trees. Now I'm going to talk about native plants and the relationship of what they have to our native flora and fauna, because it's very, very important to understand the relationship. Drum and red maples, for instance, it's a beautiful tree. In the fall, the leaves turn this beautiful red. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's native. It's native to Montgomery County. It's also the food source for the morning cloak butterfly. It's also the food source, the larval food source for the tiger swallowtail, which is what I saw out there in my compost. And it's also the larval food source for the rosy maple moth, which is a really pretty little moth, isn't it? Gorgeous. But I just can't see us trading this for, let's say, a tallow tree, because I want the color. Loblolly pines, there's tons of loblolly pines here. We had at one time a lot of longleaf pines, but they clear cut most of them. Most of the longleaf pines were clear cut. And the problem there was, I planted one in my yard, a longleaf pine, just to help preserve the species. But loblollies are beautiful pines, and they are the larval source for the elf butterfly and the southern pine sphinx moth, which is a pretty big moth, but it's very well camouflaged, as you can see. All of these butterflies and moths I'm showing you are food sources for birds in our area. So I mean, it makes sense to have them. White oak, Edward's hair-streaked butterfly, swamp chestnut, juvenile's dusky winged butterfly. I love swamp chestnut. I love the shape of the leaves. It's just a pretty plant. They have several of them growing. I don't see many of them in this area, but there are a few. Small trees and shrubs. I have 2 redbuds. Redbuds are interesting because they flower before the leaves appear in the spring. So this is a flowering, an early flowering redbud that eventually will drop the flowers, which are edible, by the way, and then they'll form their leaves. And parsley hawthorn. Good God, that's a beautiful plant. It's also the larval food source for the gray hairstreak butterfly and the red spotted purple butterfly and the viceroy butterfly. Wax myrtle. Wax myrtle, you see these little berries here. These little berries are what is known as bayberry. You know, some of our older members might remember very long ago, they made soap out of these things called bayberry soap. And bayberry, they had bayberry cologne and bayberry aftershave and, you know, bayberry balm. That's kind of ceased right now, but wax myrtles are a real important part of our ecosystem. And birds love the berries. It's also the larval host for the hairstreak butterflies, and there's a whole lot of species of hairstreak butterflies, so they will all lay their eggs on this plant. American beautyberry, Calicarpa americana. I love American beautyberry. I have a friend who makes jelly out of the berries. They're edible, but if you eat them raw, they're not eatable. They don't taste, they have no taste. But if you put a little pectin in it and a little sugar, all of a sudden the taste blooms into a really tart berry taste that jelly is great. But also these trees actually do repel mosquitoes. Buttonbush. I don't see a lot of them now. I have one growing in my yard. I like it very, very much. It's a beautiful tree. Once the flowers fall off, the nuts are edible to plants, to squirrels and other insects. Coral bean. What a beautiful plant this is. I love these flowers. Hummingbirds go crazy over these things. And I love the winter beans. So what happens is once these flowers form the fruits, they will form the beans will form. And in the winter, and beans have a black pod, and in the winter, the thing split open, the pod splits open, and shows these beautiful scarlet beans in there, which I think are more beautiful than the flowers. I just really love these things. Turk's cap. Now, Turk's cap is an interesting plant. It's a hibiscus. Turk's cap is a hibiscus, and it's a native. Hummingbirds are absolutely driven insane by these things. All flowers reproduce their nectar. In other words, when a butterfly or a hummingbird or whatever takes all the nectar out of the plant, they'll eventually replace that nectar again. It's encouraging other insects or birds to go in there and repollinate. But Turk's cap replenishes it very quickly. I was sitting on my back deck and I saw a hummingbird come by and dip its beak into a tiny Turk's cap, and I assumed took all the nectar out. And then he went around to watch him or her go around to all the other flowers, and then 30 minutes later come back to that same flower and did it again. So I did some research, and Turk's cap replenishes its nectar very quickly. So and hummingbirds know that, and they'll come in and start. They know about when that flower has reproduced all its nectar, it'll come back and take the nectar. Let's look at shrubs and flowering annuals and perennials. Green milkweed, food source for the monarch butterfly larvae. And this is what they look like. Beautiful, beautiful. I love monarchs. I think they're gorgeous. I've seen many of them lately. It's also the food source for the soldier butterfly, which looks very much like a monarch. It's smaller. And for the queen, which also looks very, very much like a monarch. So these three are really use the green milkweed as a food source for their larvae. Wine cup. Wine cup is really pretty because it has this like mat of beautiful flowers. And I have this is actually some of mine. I think I have some salvia, excuse me, growing in there. Pardon me. And it is the food source for the gray hair streak butterfly. Blue mist flower. I have a ton of this. It's a little aggressive, and you have to kind of keep it in check. But the bees, both the natives and the honeybees, absolutely love this. It is covered with them in the morning. These flowers are just covered with me. In fact, I walk out my front door and I can hear the buzzing, of the bees. There's so many bees on these plants. Lance leaf coreopsis. And as you can see, there is a pretty little bee right here. And they call it lance leaf because the leaves, of course, look like the tip of a lance. Beautiful plant. Mine are getting ready to start blooming right now. And they're going to be attracting a whole lot of plants. Gaura. Now, these are small flowers, but boy, are they beautiful. I love Gaura. Gay feather, another, and all of these plants I'm telling you are native to Montgomery County. All of these. Look at this gorgeous plant here. I mean, gay feather is really good. They also call it blazing star. It's a liatris. I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous plant. And as an accent plant, you can plant it among other, plant a little stand of this among other plants to create a just real nice color pattern. Cardinal flowers, Lobelia cardinalis, hummingbirds are just drawn to it. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous plant. It's a native, and bee balm. We make tea out of the bee balm because it's a very healthy plant for your lungs and digestive system. But it's not a source, but you can see there's butterfly here and there's a little bee here on the plant. It's not necessarily a larval food source, but it is definitely a source for honey, for nectar and pollen. And so it's covered with insects all the time. A fall obedient plant. Look at this. I mean, this is so beautiful. How can somebody say, "Oh, I'd rather have some exotic plant than have something like this"? I don't know. Blue sage. Look at this. How gorgeous this is. This is tropical scarlet sage. So gorgeous. Ground covers. Let's see how we do with time. Okay. We're running a little ahead of time here, but horse herb, Calyptocarpus vialis. It is a small herb that grows low to the ground. And as you can see it, wow, look at this. I mean, this is just beautiful how they mixed in some ferns and some climbing cypress vine and some rocks there, stones. I mean, it's just really pretty. But the interesting thing is a lot of people use it as a lawn, and they'll grow this and then they'll just mow it. And this is what it looks like mowed. So, I mean, it really looks nice to me. And it grows better in the shade than St. Augustine. And frog fruit is another one that is used as a ground cover. Unfortunately, they have a sago here, but and they also, you can also mow it, and it looks really, really pretty. I have a lot of frog food. Pigeonberry. They call it pigeonberry because the doves and pigeons love it. I have tons of doves in my yard, and they love pigeonberry. So it's a great plant, but interestingly, it has fruit and flowers at the same time. And you can see the little flowers up here and the fruit here. They love it. Coralberry, again, a gorgeous plant. Wood fern, another beautiful plant. Vines. Is somebody have a question or something? I keep hearing something. Crossvine. Look at this. This is gorgeous, and I'll tell you, the hummingbirds love this. Carolina jessamine. This is not a jasmine. It's Carolina jessamine, and it is the first in Montgomery County, the first wildflower that you will see blooming in the spring. It generally goes on fences or trees. You can see it in there. Look at this. I mean, this is so beautiful. And this is what the flower looks like. It's just really pretty. I love it. And coral honeysuckle, another beautiful plant. And somebody said, "Oh well, the Japanese honeysuckle, you can do the same thing with these. You can pull them out and taste the fruit, taste the nectar." Passion flower. We used to go get the fruit of the passion flower. Mama used to make jelly out of it. Look at this beautiful, beautiful flower, and also the fruit. The fruit is great. They call them maypops, and I think it's just pretty. It's also the I had it here. The larval food source for the Gulf fritillary butterfly, which is really, really a pretty butterfly. Invasives. I want to talk a little bit. We're doing okay, I guess. I think I was supposed to end at 10:30. We'll have a good break. How's that, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think we have the next speaker scheduled for 10:15.
Okay.
So yeah, as long as you're done around then.
Oh, I'll be done way before then. But anyway,
Okay, great.
okay. Invasives. Now I'm going to talk about several invasives. There are a lot more invasives that we've planted in Montgomery County. A lot more. But these are the most egregious invasives. And I hope I don't shock anybody. Air potatoes. Air potatoes, or you've seen them growing on plenty in the woodlands. The Woodlands Green has done a really good job in trying to eliminate them. Kathy Herrick has who just moved to Austin, by the way, near Lady Bird Johnson, the Wildflower Center, done a great job in destroying these, but they are a terrible nuisance. They actually can change the quality of the soil, or the biology of the soil, to make it unavailable for native plants to grow in there. And they also shade out any native plants that can grow. And they're just invasive as heck. They destroy the environment. And somebody planted these because they said, "Oh, it's pretty," and then it's everywhere now. These are the air potatoes. They're horrible. Chinese privet, also known as ligustrums, a terribly invasive plant. It's just, I can't tell you how much this plant has been propagated in our area. And it's so invasive, and nurseries are still selling it. And nobody understands why. They're still selling it. They should be banned from selling this. But there are other plants too that are natives that are non-natives that you can tell a Chinese privet because, or ligustrum, because of the leaves. Look at the leaves. The leaves are opposite each other, as you can see. Okay. You can look at that and see these leaves. And of course, these white flowers, terribly invasive. Oh God, Japanese honeysuckle, it's everywhere. I mean, you walk into a native, what you would think is a native forest that's never been touched, there's honeysuckle there. There's also Chinese privet growing there. It's terribly invasive. Again, it helps change the nature of the soil, so it prevents it prevents native plants from growing. But it also shades out native plants. It overcomes them because it's such a rigorous grower. And so that's one of the real bad things about a lot of these non-natives is that they are so vigorous that they will overtake and destroy native plants. You know, I actually don't think they're very pretty, but some people like them. This is probably the most invasive, one of the most invasive plants in Montgomery County, the Nandina. And everybody says, "Oh, it's so beautiful. I don't want to get rid of my Nandina." Dig it up, throw it away, burn it. Don't put it in your waste, put it in your trash can. I mean, I don't like them at all. And it's so invasive. But probably the very most invasive is the Chinese tallow. In South Louisiana, it has become the dominant tree. We had a farm. We had we raised rice and cattle, and the Chinese tallow started to grow up along the fence rows. And I mean, in a year, there were Chinese tallows all over the place. We couldn't get rid of them. We cut them down, poison them, whatever. Excuse me. Nothing could kill them. And now it's everywhere. And it's quickly becoming a tree, a dominant tree here. If you drive down some of the country roads and farm to market roads, you'll see a lot of tallows. You'll see a lot in the woodlands. There's a ton of them in the woodlands. And I drove over to Mercer the other day on Aldine Westfield. I saw tallows, potato vines, and Chinese privet, ligustrums, growing all along Aldine Westfield, way into those woods back there. I mean, they're everywhere, and they're forcing out native trees. These things produce so many berries that they germinate so quickly that they'll force out all the other native plants. I have seen them in the woodlands. I've seen them chip up, cut down and chip up these tallow trees, and seen them root or sprout from a chip. These things are indestructible. So please, and I've met some people say, "Oh, but they're so colorful. Plant a damn red maple instead of this." I mean, you're helping the environment by destroying this and planting a maple. Why not? I mean, you get the same color. And we're ending early today. But I'll wait for questions. Here's some books. Again, these are some of the ones that I told you about before. These are some of the, well, I have Harris County too. I think we probably have some people from Harris County as well. Native Plant Society of Texas. And again, there's my website. And any questions? We're open to questions.
Yes, we have some questions. Let me go up to the top here. Milkweed. Which one do you recommend?
Green milkweed.
Green milkweed.
Green milkweed.
Alrighty. Let's see. Are buttonbush nuts edible by humans?
No.
No. Okay.
Not
Excellent.
that I know of. I mean, I've never tried them. No, they're not a human.
All right. Lots of buttonbush talk. I love my buttonbush. Someone asked, what native plant, where do you get native plants? Like, where do you recommend getting native plants?
Oh, okay. Arborgate is a great place to get them out of Tomball. Buchanan's downtown, excuse me, in the Heights, they have a lot of great native plants there. Nature's Way used to carry them, but I don't know that they carry a lot of native plants anymore. Lindsay's Native Plants in Conroe. Lindsay's has got some native plants out there. There are several entities that do native plant sales. The Native Plant Society has a fall native plant sale. Usually, I think it's held at the Woodlands Landscape Solutions, which is usually at the park down in Creekside. And let's see, I'm trying to, Plants for All Seasons at Tomball as well has some native plants. And as far as, and there's the places elsewhere, native plant seeds can be obtained from the Native American Seeds Company, which is out of Junction in just west of San Antonio. And they have great seeds, and also Wild Seeds out of Fredericksburg which is a great place to visit, by the way, if you're so inclined. And Fredericksburg is a nice place, but you can get native plant seeds there as well. Mercer has a plant sale, I think twice a year, maybe 3 times a year, and they have native plants. And sometimes the Master Gardeners in Montgomery County has native plants at some of their sales. So those are the places that you can get them. And hopefully we try the Native Plant Society of Texas talked to HEB, and HEB did put some native plants on their in their plant areas. But they're small choices there. There are not very many choices, but there are some. So those are the only places I know that have. I think there's a place, Jason's, also in the Heights, has some native plants. But that should be as far as I know, the biggest list.
Yeah, and it looks like a lot of people have posted some of their favorites in the chat too.
Oh, great. Okay.
So people have so many options. Hopefully we'll get lots of native plants in everyone's yards. Someone asked the best way to get rid of Chinese tallow.
Okay. Ooh. Well, cut it down before it fruits, because when those little berries hit the ground, they're going to sprout. Cut it down. I would just keep cutting it down. I mean, I don't recommend using any kind of poisons or stuff like that. I would just cut it down, and then if it starts to resprout, cut it down again. Just keep cutting it down until you've sapped all the strength out of the root system, or dig it up. But even if digging it up, you might miss some of the roots and they may be resprouting. It's such a terrible tree. It was brought to the United States by Benjamin Franklin in 1780 something, because he thought it would be a great tree to start a wax business because of the berries, to start some kind of candle making, soap making business or something like that. So, but unfortunately, he did a lot of nice things, but unfortunately, that was one of the things that weren't so nice. So, yeah, I just keep cutting it back until it's gone, until it stops. I know in the Woodlands, the Parks Department does keep the native plant, the tallows down, but the problem is that a lot of it's growing along the sides of the streets in the Woodlands, and I see it all over the place, and also in businesses, those little shopping centers and stuff. I see a lot of those in there.
Okay,
Maybe somebody can talk to the residential design committee in the Woodlands. Terry, that's a job for you. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sure she is. Let's see. Tom has a question. Let me see. How do I unmute you, Tom? You should be able to. There we go. Okay, I've pushed ask. Oops. Wait.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
are.
Yes, Bob. Brian Beebe says hi, by the way.
Hi.
My wife and I have started a tallow and privet killing attack at one of our preserves with the BLC. And one of the techniques we use on tallow, which has been highly effective, is girdling. I don't know if you are
Ah,
familiar with it.
that's a good
And
idea. I hadn't even thought about that, but yes.
it works. And we do some stuff we call drill and fill, to where we actually do use herbicide on the big ones that we
Right.
can't dig out. We don't like doing that. But girdling for the tallow, unlike the China berry,
Uh-huh.
the bark comes off really easily. You can almost get it off in one piece,
Oh,
about
wow.
4 inches of it, and then it stops the flow of nutrients in that tree, and it eventually kills it. So
How high from the ground do you girdle it?
we go up, we start anywhere. It all depends on your height and how much you want to bend over. Obviously, you lean, but I usually try to go. I'm about 6 feet tall, so waist and above.
Okay.
Now we do cut it down every now and then, and dig out the root system if we can, or score it and just do a little painting of a herbicide on it, and not getting it anywhere else. But again, we don't like to do the herbicide.
Right. Well, and how big is the girdle? Do you, I mean,
So it all depends on the diameter of the tree, but let's just say your average size, you go about 3 or 4 inches, 3 or 4 inches from the top of the girdle to the bottom of the girdle, and just all the way around. Then you have to get it down to that, what is it, the phylum level, I can't remember the basics of the venous system of the tree, or the arterial system, but you got to get it to that one particular level, and then you scrub it with a scrubby pad, and that breaks up all of that residue, and it can't pass nutrients any longer after that. So
sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I like that idea a lot. Yeah. And it's not real work intensive. It's, I like that. I
you
like
know,
it.
your hands will feel it after you've been doing it for a couple of hours,
Oh,
because
yeah.
you got to use like a painter's tool, or some people use a carpet knife to get it started. I just use a handsaw to get it started, and then I just start pinning. My wife is a master at getting the whole thing off in one piece, so that's she's good at that.
Yeah. My wife's much more efficient than I am in a lot of that stuff, so I understand. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. Any other questions?
Let's see. I don't think I see any other questions. Did I miss any, guys? If you have any questions, feel free to unmute or ask in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with. Huh. Ruth, I can unmute you. Oh, she wants to know, what is girdling? Maybe we can post like a video. We can send a video out to show that. Maybe Tom or you, Bob, might have a source.
I will check, or if Tom has one, that's fine.
For the Chinese tallow specifically.
But I can emulate it. I can find some tallows I know and
Yeah.
girdling, and I could send it out. I could send it to you, and then you can whatever, get it out to your group.
Okay, excellent. Well, I think that might be all the questions that we have. Those are really fantastic presentations. Thank you so much, Bob.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm happy to do it, and I hope everyone has a great class today, and you do really well, and you enjoy your participation in the Master Naturalist. It's a great organization.
All right, thank you. We have so many people saying thank you in the chat. And I know on your last presentation, lots of people were thanking you, and really appreciated the information. So
I'm
you're
glad
getting
you
a lot of
enjoyed it.
love from our group today.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you. And feel free, you can stay tuned, or I'm sure you'll get some emails from us pretty soon.
That's fine. No problem. I'd love to have it.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Bob.
Bye.
And we have a few announcements from the committee here. I will go ahead and give one of them. After some announcements, we'll do a short break. I see Ashley's joined to give the next presentation. So we'll do a couple announcements, then take a break, and we can get Ashley started. First, make sure that you have your full name, or at least your first initial of your last name in the chat. It looks like, or in your Zoom name, it looks like everyone does. So I think we're good for attendance. Next, mid-May, we will be ordering shirts and official name tags. These are the pretty engraved ones. So make sure you have your hours reported by then. I know some folks have had some problems with the VMS. Directly message me today if you are still having problems with the VMS, and we will get a list for Melissa to contact. Also recommend contacting Melissa directly if you haven't done that. And if you have any changes to your name or your preferred shirt size, let us know. Probably the best place to email for that would be the heartwoodtraining@gmail.com. And I will put that in the chat so everyone remembers. Heartwoodtraining@gmail.com. So if you have a name change request or a shirt size change request, please let us know as soon as possible. That's just about a week, 2 weeks away until we order those. So make sure you've got your hours put in, and make sure your finalized name and shirt size is the same as the one that you submitted originally, or contact us if you want to change it. I was going to hand this over to Lisa, who's here. Lisa Houston, the Heartwood president. Let me see if she's still here. Oh, here she is. Okay, Lisa, you should be able to unmute yourself, but it seems like folks are having problems, so I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, got it. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that we are having our chapter meeting on Wednesday, May the 8th at Sam Houston State University. We're going to have a great speaker after we finish our chapter business. Mary Warwick's going to be here from the Houston Humane Society's Wildlife Center. I think you may have seen her on the news a couple of years ago. She was the one that was orchestrating the saving of the bats underneath the Waugh Street Bridge and other places when it got so cold, and helped rehabilitate and put those back out. But she's going to talk to us about bats and some of the things that the Houston Humane Society is doing. So I hope everybody can join us either in person or virtually. And I think that's it, unless anybody's got any questions for me. I hope to see you on Wednesday.
Thanks, Lisa. I want to clarify real quick. Thank you, Jeff, for reaching out to me. We do not have to have, well, y'all do not have to have your required 40 hours of volunteer time of your initial training and of your advanced training by mid-May. Sorry if that was confusing. If you would like to get your pen during May's presentation of the name tags and the graduation, or June's presentation of the name tags and the shirts, then have your hours to us by then. It will be June's graduation will be the last day that you can get your initial training, or you will be required to have all of your initial training hours by then, because the class will end that day. So do make sure that you have all of your initial training hours, which I think is 40. And if you're having problems with that, we still have, I think, a class a week, except for May 25th or 26th, until the graduation. So hopefully you can catch up between now and then. If not, contact us as soon as you can so we can work with you. But yeah, like I said, you don't have to have the 40 volunteer hours or the 12 advanced training hours by mid-May. That's only if you are aiming to get your Dragonfly pin that day. It's up to you how much time you have. As long as you have it by the end of the year, you'll still get your pin and you can still have the whole training or the whole pin production in the chapter meeting if you choose to attend. Otherwise, we'll just give it to you and you can just post it on Facebook for your friends to see. Okay, graduation date is the 8th. Thank you, Lisa. And during the graduation day, we will present our final projects. If you're working on one, we'll kind of set it up like a science fair that you used to do when you were at school. We'll have tables and everyone can put their presentation on the table. Any pamphlets that you might have made can go on the table, and the entire chapter is invited to come and check out what you guys have done, and then also support you as we call your name and you come up to the front and we give you your name tag and your shirt. It's a fun day. Last year, a lot of us brought our families to come and watch because it's a big accomplishment. Sometimes it takes some support for those of us who have, obligations in the home. Maybe you have a spouse or somebody helping you, and so they can come and see what all this work has amounted to, and it's a nice way to just celebrate all together. And there's Lisa and Virginia are adding some to the chat here. Any hours of intern training over 40, you can report as AT. So hopefully that will help you guys who have more than 40 hours through our training. You might even qualify by graduation for your first Master Naturalist pin. Okay, so I want to give you guys a chance to have a little break before Ashley starts her presentation. She will start at 10:15. If that's all right with you, Ashley, I think that's what we have on the calendar. So we'll go ahead and take a short break, try and meet us back here at 10:15, and we will get started again. A quick note for Annette. Annette is doing a Bluebird presentation. If anyone is interested in joining her, message Annette's iPhone on this chat. And Annette, I will message you in just a minute. I put a link to the visual for the hour requirements. It's on the Heartwood page, and it's under prospective members, how to join. It shows you the hour requirements in case anyone was confused about what we're looking for by mid-May for the June graduation. And again, a reminder that you have until the end of the year to plug all your volunteer hours, and any hours you work on the project count as volunteer hours. So if you are doing a project, be sure to track your hours and plug them into the VMS. And I would love to get on to Ashley. If you have more questions, just message in the chat. You can direct message me, or Virginia's in the chat, and also Lisa is in the chat. So we all can try and help you or get you to the right person. Okay, I want to turn this over to Ashley. Let's see, I asked to unmute. I'm sorry if folks are having problems unmuting. You should be able to, but I understand Zoom is kind of tricky sometimes. So just let me know if you need help with that. And Ashley, we're so glad to see you again. Feel free to get started whenever you're ready.
Good morning, everybody. So good to quote unquote see y'all again. I'm glad that we met last week, so y'all have some invasive handouts. A lot of those insect handouts were referencing some invasives that we'll discuss today. So thank y'all for joining me. I am the Research and Education Director for the Texas Invasive Species Institute, which it was initially a sister institute of TexasInvasives.org when we were founded 12 years ago, about 5 years after the foundation of TexasInvasives.org. However, in 2020, we acquired TexasInvasives.org. So it went from being headquartered in Austin to now headquartered at Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, Texas. And we still focus on early detection and rapid response to newly invasive pests, but we also want to enhance public education about invasive species because that's the best way to make progress against the fight. The more that people know about invasives, the more aware they are of their habits, then they can do better and we can slow the spread of invasive species. So all of this has been made possible over the 12 plus years through partners like Texas Parks and Wildlife, USDA APHIS, which is the invasive species branch of the USDA, Texas A&M Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, and we do a lot of collaboration with AgriLife Extension. So while I'll talk to you about a few species today and how to report species, you can always look up this information on both of our websites. So we have TexasInvasives.org and TSUSinvasives.org. They have the same invasive species database. You might find more plants on Texas Invasives, but they'll both include pictures, descriptions, distribution and habitat, how they spread, how you can manage them in your area, if there are any native lookalikes so that you're not accidentally removing native species. That will also be listed here. When I talk about reporting today, we're talking about on the TexasInvasives.org platform. That's kind of why we still have two websites. It ends up, it's a lot harder to merge a massive database with the reporting system with our other website. So needless to say, you can always look up that information after this presentation. So I always like to start at the beginning, kind of like how I started entomology. We always start with what is an invasive species, because if we understand the definition, we will use the name properly. And then we'll also be able to delineate weeds from exotic species from invasive species. So the federal definition is only 25 years old. President Bill Clinton had an executive order where they finally defined in a federal sense what an invasive species is. So it's a species that is non-native or alien to the ecosystem under consideration, whose introduction causes or is likely to cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human health. I have that part red and bolded because that is the important separation from an exotic species or a weed-like species versus an invasive species. Invasive species cause harm. Their harm can come in many different forms. It can impact our recreation, our health, our animals' health, industry, economy, agriculture. Sometimes they're crop pests, forest pests, they're bark beetles, our natural heritage. So our native plants and animals are under attack, affecting our natural ecosystems. So the reason we battle them is it's a large cost. It costs over $138 billion a year annually for the United States to manage. Apologies, I forgot to mute my phone. And I never get calls this early on a Saturday. That figures. So it costs us a lot of money to manage them. Texas aquatic invasive species can cost $17 million a year to the state. Again, that is just the cost to manage, not fully eradicate. So we know about a lot of recreational impacts like zebra mussels and giant salvinia, but they also can pose significant impacts to our health, like black velvet leatherleaf slugs spreading parasites. And we talked last week about mosquitoes. So the Asian tiger mosquito spread Zika, West Nile, malaria, dengue fever, right? Way too many things are also spread by our invasives as well. Now, sometimes the harm is obvious. With the emerald ash borer, one of these more infamous species, you can see the damage that it does. This is the exact same street, just 3 years apart. And this is ash trees lining one street. And the next 3 years later, after the emerald ash borer came through, it completely decimated all of these trees. I always like to point out the irony that in the 80s, this street was lined with elm trees, and an invasive pathogen spread by bark beetle, Dutch elm disease, killed all the elms. So they thought, you know what's a great idea? Let's keep planting monocultures. So, in a restorative sense, monocultures are not a good idea because when you do things like this, even in an urban setting, you completely wipe out all of the trees in the area, and it just takes one pest to do it. So sometimes the harm is not as obvious, but very, very painful and widespread. So the red imported fire ant is one of those species. It's an invasive fire ant that has replaced our native fire ants. Our native fire ants were not nearly as aggressive, their stings are not as painful, and they don't displace everything. So our red imported fire ant have been known to harm bobwhite quail, horned lizard populations, a lot of ground dwelling animals. They also have a voracious appetite for crops. So they've been known to destroy corn, soybean, blueberries, cabbage, and they cost Texas alone $500 million a year to manage, not eradicate. They're found in over 92% of our counties. So there's no eradicating the fire ant. And then there's also the harm to human and animal health. If you are allergic to a fire ant sting, just like if you are allergic to a honeybee sting, fire ant stings can cause anaphylactic shock if you're allergic. And that reaction can happen in humans, mammals, and livestock. So we battle invasive species because they are harmful, they cost us a lot of money, but the thing is that they also spread. That's why they cost us so much money. Maybe they produce more seeds. Maybe their seeds last longer. They're drought resistant. They can survive in brackish water. They have 3 times as many generations. They are resistant to predators. You know, there are so many reasons why they then invade and cause more harm. One of my more visual examples that I like to use for is the red lionfish. So this is a venomous fish that is still for sale in aquarium. It's a very beautiful, ornate fish. You can see it in your local aquarium. You can buy it and keep it in your house. Not that I recommend it, but this is not an illegal fish to own. It does have paraplegic venom in its spines that will paralyze any vertebrate. So from a fish to a human, it can paralyze and kill you. So, like many aquarium, even today, there was an aquarium in Miami that had a pair of lionfish. In 1985, there was a hurricane. The aquarium flooded. Hurricanes, Miami, aquariums, flooding, that's not that unusual. Look at what we're surrounded with right in our area. The thing is that nobody did anything, right? It's 1985. This is technically 14 years before a federal definition. So, you know, the federal entities are not thinking about invasive species. The research biologists like myself are probably acutely aware, but it's not a national accepted concept, right? So they leave them alone. One pair of lionfish, they're left alone. What can you do? They're in the wild, right? No, they're not native to that area. They're native to the Southeast Pacific where they have predators. So now, since we've done nothing, they were then widespread from Philadelphia all around the Florida coast, throughout the Gulf of Mexico, all along the Texas coast, along the coast of Belize, where we have our second largest coral reef in the world, throughout the Caribbean, and they're all the way down to Venezuela. So they have gone and they have ravaged everything because they have paraplegic venom. They can eat anything smaller than themselves. And so they have also had an indirect impact, not only on they've had a direct impact on our fish populations and an indirect impact on our coral reefs because they are eating the fish that maintain our coral reefs. So how do they spread, right? Lionfish swim. That's how they spread. But sometimes we can't always explain expansion, and it was kind of hinted to in that example. 99.9% of the time, the reason invasive species spread is human assistance. We have been moving things ever since Marco Polo went to the Khan Empire in China, right? What was that, like the thousands, the 1200s, right? That's a long time that humans have been moving things back and forth. So there has been a lot of accidental spread of invasive species. Zebra mussels accidentally brought here in ballast water. emerald ash borer accidentally brought here because they were embedded in ash pallets. We'll get into their life cycle later, but there is still a ton of purposeful spread happening. Your biggest culprit is going to be the landscaping industry and your pets. Pets. Oh, pets. Right? The red lionfish, you can still buy it. You can still buy a python, but we know what the pythons have done to Florida. Thankfully, things like the apple snail, there are some prohibited species. So you cannot buy an apple snail in the state of Texas because we know it to be an invasive species, and we'll talk on that more later. So it's just really important to be aware of how you could accidentally be moving things by firewood, by not cleaning your gear when you're leaving a site, or what you're bringing into your yard on purpose, or as we'll talk about, there's been a lot of decades of uh-ohs trying to fix things, right? We brought plants in for erosion control and that blew up in our face, or we've brought things prematurely as biocontrols. Like Australia brought the cane toad over there. That's a toad that can get up to 15 pounds and has a hallucinogenic venom on its back. Australia is a continent of unique marsupials. You do not bring a toxic frog. But that's what they did. Sorry. Anyway, so it's really important to remember things that allow a plant to grow easily could also be a reason it's named something else. So I don't have a good green thumb. I'm great with plants that are easy to propagate, easy to care for, and they're pretty. They're useful, they're nice. The pollinators come. I don't have to do anything to keep them alive. That's usually the character of an invasive plant, right? They have tons of seeds, they grow fast, they're hardy, disease resistant. So you're going to notice a lot of contradictions. I may talk to you about, not today, but you'll hear about how horrible privet is, yet you can still go and buy it. There is a lot of action that is happening, customs and USDA APHIS. That's why you're supposed to declare items when you come back, and they inspect and they surveil things as much as they can because so many invasives are trying to enter our borders day in and day out. There's tons of research happening, control, management, that's studies that are improving and being spread to the public, and then monitoring and restoration is some of the hardest action that's happening. Texas Invasives, we've combined with Parks and Wildlife. Part of our outreach is supporting public awareness campaigns. So protect the lakes you love, never dump your aquarium, and not moving firewood are some of those important campaigns that we publicize out there. So while researchers and federal and state entities are doing one half of it where they're doing a lot of control and surveying and management, monitoring, that's just one half of the picture. The other half of the picture is having a very engaged public, citizens who care, who are removing things even on a local level. Because if we thought about it, if everybody removed invasives from their own yard, the impact would be enormous, right? So invasive species is an uphill game anyways. We're not trying to get, I mean, nationwide change would be amazing, but if we can just get individuals to care more and do more, that can have a really large impact. So what you can do, oh, and a note to the President Lisa and also to the moderator. I think the botanist was supposed to pass out quiet invasion manuals. I don't remember if they're before or after me, but since I didn't visit, any speaker who's coming on later, I hope that y'all can get access to the Quiet Invasion. It's a booklet, but also a wonderful online resource that lists invasive species in the area. There's always our website, our web reporting app, so texasinvasives.org or TSUS. So you always have those resources, and we try to keep things as updated as possible. If you want to keep informed kind of on more what we're doing at Texas Invasives, what's happening in the state, and then also important updates nationwide, strongly encourage you to go to our website and sign up for the Texas iWire. It will also, you'll often see the Heartwood Master Naturalists are highlighted because of all of the amazing invasive species removal that they do, and also the Woodlands Task Force. So how do you stop it? Prevent dispersal. Be more aware aware of what you are doing, right? Clean, drain, dry your boat. Don't move firewood. It sounds silly, but when you move things, you're giving things a free ride. And help us with detection. That's why TexasInvasives.org created the Sentinel Pest Network. So this is kind of the list of the big bads, pests of high regulatory significance, ones that we know will cost way too much money and cause too much harm, ecological harm as well. So these are kind of our big bads. These are our immediate reporters that we want everyone to inform us about across the state. So it's our Sentinel Pest Network. It originally started as a list of dirty dozen. So it originally started as a dozen pests, so things like the Asian longhorn beetle, cactus moth, emerald ash borer, giant hogweed, tropical spiderwort, things that we were afraid would get here to Texas, and many of them have gotten here to Texas. And the list has expanded. It's now up to about 28 species, including some pathogens. The red lionfish is on there. Zebra mussels are still there. We've got citrus greening, Asian jumping worms. And you can see here in the far right column where it's red or this more pinkish, currently in Texas. Most of the species, yes, they are here in Texas. You may wonder, Ashley, why do you want us still reporting? Because we need to track how fast it's spreading. Just because it's here doesn't mean we give up, right? That's not how it works. You know, we didn't give up after the Alamo. So we're not going to give up now. So we really encourage you to report any of these species, and we'll go over some of them today. So the types of organisms that are on there, it's kind of 50-50 plant and insect, but there are 3 mollusks and a fish on there as well. These are the species that are right there on our front page, our home page. We want you to report. It does not require a login. You can click on the species that you're wanting to report. If you don't like scrolling left to right, you can click the Take Action tab and then report it, and you can scroll up and down, and all of the species are there for you to report. We'll get into more details later on that. It's a really simple form, but now we'll get into some species that we want you to manage and report in your area. First one are apple snails, so Pomacia maculata. It's a freshwater ampullarid snail. So the adults are freshwater. It was a pet. It's native to Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina. It's often confused with other Pomacia species, but what's really important to note is no Pomacia species is native to the United States. So is it a large snail with weird eggs, which we'll touch on? You should probably remove it from your area. It has been introduced through the pet trade. This is a prohibited species in Texas. It has also been suggested that aquarium dumps are how it got out in Texas. As you can see, the larger the blue dot, the more sightings there are. So the Houston area is inundated with them, and floods that keep happening. We're noticing a northern progression. So in about 2020, 2021, we noticed our first report in Lake Houston, and so it was edging on the Kingwood area. And then we've started to get some reports like off of ditches in 242. So it's really important for y'all to report these to us. We are trying to track them through the watersheds, but it seems like they're utilizing floods, making their spread more erratic. So there are 2 invasive snails on our Sentinel pest list. One that is not here, the giant African land snail. It is called that because it lives on land. It is from Africa, and it is a big snail, like up to 6-9 inches, big snail. And then we have our apple snail. This is the one that is here in Texas. It is aquatic, so you're always going to find it near a body of water, and it has a spiral shell versus a conical, so it doesn't look like an ice cream cone, looks more like your flat snail shell. So things that are important to think about in the field is the life cycle stages. The adults of some snails are fully aquatic, so you might not see them. If you are walking around and you see bright pink eggs on aquatic vegetation like this, that means you have apple snails. So apple snails, the adults are fully aquatic. It can be hard to dredge them out, but we always encourage, please try dredging them out. Molluscicides are not recommended because these snails can burrow deeper into the sediment and avoid it. So then you're kind of introducing these chemicals that aren't even providing effective treatment. So what is most effective is doing something about those eggs. So another reason why we don't want these snails here are they are able to spread rat lungworm, which is an angiostrongylus nematode that can accidentally infect humans and dogs and cats. It does not survive in us, but it is most unwelcome. We do not want nematodes infecting us, especially because the species of nematodes that they can spread, they accidentally wander into our brain or our gut. Yes, they do not complete their life cycle in us. No, it is very often not fatal. However, does anybody want brain worms? No. So that's why we have signage. If you need any more signs, I know the Woodlands Township has been amazing about putting them up in the area, but if y'all work for any other entities that need signage like this in areas where they're infested, we encourage you to squish the eggs. It can be hard to get a hold of the adults, but please, any eggs that you see, please squish them. We recommend your boots. One, they're gross, they're squishy. I'm a biologist. I don't go around squishing them with their hands, but recently I found out through an outreach that it's all over TikTok. There's also a chitinous residue that you could be allergic to if you squish these eggs with your hands. So please use your boots and then wipe off your boots when you're done. But please squish any eggs that you see and do not be alarmed. There is a conical large snail that does look like the giant African land snail. However, it's about half the size. It only gets to about 4 inches. It's called the rosy wolf snail because it will always have a pinkish hint to it. It is a predatory snail, though. It's native in our neck of the woods, but if you go more central Texas, it's considered invasive, right? It's one of those. See, it's not native over there, and being predatory, it can cause harm. So this is one of those, you don't have to remove it, but if you notice it causing an issue with your compost pile or anything else in your garden, feel free to remove it. Just don't be alarmed, but we want you to report regardless of which species, because we'd rather have a wrong report than a missed identification, especially since that snail isn't here. A beetle that is here, is in our area, is the red bay ambrosia beetle. This is a small wood-boring beetle native to India, Japan, and Taiwan. It was brought over here accidentally in imported plants or wood products, and it is a good flyer. So it can fly miles on itself. So the fact that it got a free ride being imported over here is how it has then spread. This map here with all of these colors is just the U.S. Forest Service way of chronologically showing you the spread. So right here is initial detection in Georgia, and it has since spread. Yes, it is here in Texas. Yes, it is in Harris County. It was recorded in Kingwood by, I think, one of your master naturalists or one of the it was in someone who resides in the area and is a part of one of these chapters. They noticed it, and laurel wilt and ambrosia beetle have been detected in Harris County as well. So it's expanding. It's known to affect laurel trees. What that means is it can affect sassafras trees, which are native and important. They are also good root, like herbal trees, pond spice, red bay, avocado. So Mexico is especially concerned of this because the red bay ambrosia beetle has already impacted California's avocado production. And the way that it does that is because it is very small. So you're not often going to see that. That is a penny. That is the beetle on a penny. This is the beetle on a log. That's a beetle on the log. Just for reference, that is the beetle on the log. These are the traps that we use. So we do have a grad student that is doing this for their thesis at this time because we've helped detect this beetle in the area before. So he does have some locations, but if you are in a residential area and you have red bay or avocado and are willing to have a trap in your tree for a couple of months out of the winter, that is a funnel lingrin trap. Please send me an email. It'll be at the end, but the adults are small. They are identifiable. There is this trick. There is this noticeable crease on it. So if you happen to have a microscope at home and it has 20x eyepieces and you're good at that, it is a unique beetle that none of our native ones look like. So that is appreciated from an entomological aspect. It is identifiable. However, how do we expect you to suspect that you could have red bay ambrosia beetle? How are your laurel trees looking? Are they suddenly dying from the top? Is there leaf wilting or color change? Is there discoloration in wood? Like if you peel back some of the bark, or when you cut a limb, are you seeing a ring within it? That means that there's the fungal infection of laurel wilt is there. The tree is infected. It will die. You need to destroy it by mulching and or burning, but I've realized where we're talking. So mulching and spraying with a pesticide and then bagging it, because you need to stop the bark beetle in its tracks as well. And remember, it's very, very small. So this is another one of those sentinel pests or sentinel pest species that we want you to report. It is found throughout the Woodlands Township in the area that you'll probably even do some removal if you get involved with the task force. So this is a Japanese climbing fern. It's called that because it is a climbing fern that is native to Japan. This is one of those species that has a, what is it, 140 years on us, or 120 for sure. So by 1903, it was naturalized in Georgia. This is one of those species that is still for sale on the internet. It can cover shrubs, the ground, tall trees, because it has a rhizome root system and that allows them to form thick mats. So not only can they grow hundreds of feet, but their thick mats can get to a thickness, right? A height of, or depth, a depth of like 10, 20 feet. So they smother native plants and trees. They create a fuel ladder. So they exacerbate wildfires, making them worse, creating an unnatural setting. And so they are vine-like perennials that climb over shrubs, trees, or structures. And they have a quite varied leaf appearance. So they are doubly compound, but they vary. When they are newly sprouting, they have these very finger-like, very fern-frond appearing. So right there are little spores on the end. So this is a newly, like a reproductive leaf happening right there. However, they can also have leaves that look like giant fingers that kind of are saying, "Haha," to you. I'm climbing and I'm doing what I want. So a varied appearance. They'll have a red vine. All of this seems kind of erratic, but that in itself is an identifying characteristic. Red vine, having fern-like and compound leaves that are just climbing all over the place. It's highly suspect that you have Japanese climbing fern. So if you have these fronds on them, that means that there are spores at the end. Ferns are reproduced by spores. So if you're knocking those spores around, you're spreading more and creating more climbing ferns around. So it's really important. If, the only time you can pull it down is when those fronds are present, we understand. Just please be sure to bag anything in black trash bags before disposing of them, because we want to ensure that they're not going to just then reseed at the landfill or respore at the landfill. So our next more infamous one is the emerald ash borer. And this one, all the yellow counties are where the emerald ash borer has been detected as of this map, and it will attack any species of ash. So as the name suggests, it is a green boring beetle. So it is a beetle that bores into wood. So here you can see adults emerging from the tree, creating their unique D shape. These are those blue-crested beetles I talked about last week. So they were spread here accidentally in wood pallets, and then they were spread further accidentally by people moving firewood, right? Their ash tree would die. They would chop it. They would use it for firewood. They would spread it. Ash trees were infected with beetles. People didn't know because They just didn't know. And yes, it is here in Texas. It was first found in Harrison County in 2016 and then kind of kept spreading in Northeast, getting up to Texarkana. It made a jump over here to Denton and Tarrant counties around 2020 and 2021, has then spread through Dallas and up to Cook, Hopkins and Camp counties as well. So it is spreading in Northeast Texas. The way that this was detected was by a citizen scientist taking a picture and reporting it, not by people like me that spent 6 years putting up thousands of emerald ash borer traps. It was by engaged citizens. So that's why we ask you to report things. Emerald ash borer, it completes its life cycle in ash trees. So this is a beetle that is specific to ashes. So are you noticing a green metallic beetle on your ash tree? Is your ash tree not looking so great? We need to talk. So the adults emerge from the tree, creating these D-shaped holes. They lay eggs on the bark. The eggs hatch into larvae. These are those chomping larvae that gnaw through the tree. So they gnaw through the circulatory system of the tree, through the phloem, through the xylem. They just chew through. So the way I like to describe invasive beetles versus native beetles is all trees have beetles in them. Native beetles like their house. They don't like to burn it down. They want to keep it. They want to keep it for generation after generation after generation, right? They're generational wealth. They want to keep it. Invasive beetles are like new money or new wealth, or even worse than that. They don't care about the house that they're in. They will burn down that house and they'll just find a new one. That's how they act in our trees. So they just chew through the trees, they pupate. So, right, they form that solid pupa embedded in the wood. They were pupa when they were in the ash pallets, when they accidentally got introduced. Then they emerged as adults here in Michigan, and that's how they spread, right? They stay pupa for months. So it's things that they weren't looking for 20 years ago. Now we're looking for things like that. So it is a small beetle. I'll show you. It is larger than the red bay ambrosia beetle. You can see it with your naked eye. Well, you can see the other one with your naked eye too, but you're going to notice again more the sick tree versus the beetle itself. So these are in your ash trees. Are you noticing it dying from the top down? Is their canopy dieback? Is it trying to regrow from the bottom with abnormally large leaves? So that's a sign, right? Dying at the top means nutrients aren't getting to the top. Regrowing from the side means nutrients aren't going to the top, so they're trying again from the side. Are you noticing D-shaped exit holes? And these are dainty D-shaped exit holes. That picture makes it look so much bigger. And then if bark is sloughing off and you are noticing galleries, bark beetle chewing galleries, you need to destroy that tree immediately. Mulch it. Do not keep it for firewood. Do not save it for a friend. Mulch it and spray it with pesticide immediately if you cannot bag everything, because we need to prevent it from spreading. So it is about half the size of a penny, so much larger than the other one. It is unique in its coloration. We do have native beetles that are metallic green like this. We do have native buprestids. So this is one of those bullet-shaped wood-boring beetles I talked to you about last week. However, we do not have native beetles that have green elytra, those green hardwings, and a reddish pink abdomen. This is like a Christmas beetle. Think of that kind of coloration. We don't have native species that keep that coloration. Our native Agrilis species, none of these attack ash, or none of them live on ash to begin with, and none of them have the red abdomen. All of them, their abdomen is the same color as their elytra, or they have white markings on them that the emerald ash borer does not. So this again comes down to more of, do you have a sick ash tree? Please contact us. This species is not here in Texas, but it is very concerning because it's a very good flyer, but thankfully it is a very unique looking insect. So this is a true bug. This is a hemiptera, so that means it's got different wings, and it's a part of the lanternfly. We didn't touch on that family last week because my goodness, we never would have gotten out of there. So the spotted lanternfly, this is one of those newer introductions that has happened since I've been an invasive species biologist, and it was first detected in Pennsylvania in 2014. It accidentally hitchhiked because we're still importing plants left and right, and that's not a bad thing. It's just something that we're still doing to this day, and that's how it accidentally got here. So it was kind of they did a lot of outreach. They still do annual or biannual or quarterly smashings of the spotted lanternfly. However, it is expanding as well. Because it is able to fly, it has expanded into Ohio, Michigan, North Carolina, Virginia. So we are concerned about it migrating because it can infest a 70 different types of host plants. So that means it has a wide variety of habitats that it can infiltrate and it can survive off of. And some of those host plants are economically important. Things like apples, cherries, which are not necessarily concerning to us down here in Texas, but we are concerned about our maple, our poplars, our stone fruits, and especially our grapevines. We have a very widespread wine production, and we're pretty good at it too. The unfortunate thing about the lanternfly's widespread diet or habitat preference is that it survives on many invasive plants as well because they're from the same area of Asia. It's basically like a home away from home. So that's another reason to think about the invasive or exotic plants you have in your yard. You could be inviting exotic invertebrates there as well. Again, a piece of home away from home. One of those examples is the tree of heaven. The reason we're especially concerned for the spotted lanternfly getting here is this is one of its preferred trees. The green counties here is the distribution of tree of heaven in the United States, but here in Texas. And you can see its distribution strongly overlaps with our wine producing areas. So that means that the spotted lanternfly is likely to make it here. So it's really important that we're removing tree of heaven plants, but also looking for this spotted lanternfly because the sooner as if we can detect this immediately, we can have a chance of eradicating the population. So thankfully, it is a very obvious insect. It's over an inch. So it's a big bug when you think about it. I like to call it a little watermelon bug. It's got these watermelon spots and these spotted forewings on them, and no insect in the United States. I mean, no true bug, right? Some butterflies might look like this, but then you'll get up and you'll go, okay, that's a butterfly. It's not a bug. No bugs look like this in the United States. So this is a very identifiable species. These are the adults that can get up to 1 inch. The instars themselves are obvious, right? They may not be like, oh my goodness, but they are very conspicuous, right? They're not plant colored like aphids can be, or other stink bugs or fly bug larvae might be. So we've got early immatures, the late immatures, the red coloration starts developing some more. And so to then touch on the host plant of the tree of heaven, the reason why it's also it's an invasive species in and of itself. However, it's one of those that was highly sold in the ornamental industry, but it overtakes sites. It produces toxins. It's allelopathic. Its root system is aggressive that it can crack through sewers and foundations, and it produces way too many seeds. So the leaves are large, like up to 4 feet, and compound with 11 to 25 leaflets on them. The flowers are not anything noticeable, and they've probably already come out, or they're coming out right about now, late spring, clusters of small yellow green flowers. What will really be obvious are those samara seeds. So much like ash trees have those paper wafery samara seeds, so does the tree of heaven, but theirs are beautiful. And that's partly why it was an ornamental plant. It has these very nice orangish pinkish seeds. However, one tree can produce up to 325,000 seeds. It's way too many seeds. Think about how many millions of seeds 5 trees would produce. All right. So Asian jumping worms. This is one of our more newly recognized species. However, I'm highly concerned that it's widespread because we just didn't know any better here. We didn't know that it was different than the European earthworm. So the Asian jumping worm, or Amynthus species, is known as the snake worm, crazy worm, Alabama jumper. That applies to basically over the 400 species of Amynthus worldwide. I'm not getting into species of worm. There's maybe 5 to 8 of them here in the United States because they're all recognizable by the same thing. They all cause the same problems. So an Amynthus is an Amynthus. They're all jumping worms. They all need to be removed. So, much like other soil dwelling organisms, they hitchhiked and potted plants. They've actually been here in the Northeast since the 1910s. Problem is, they're now invading southwards, and that could be from the movement of potted plants, right? Everybody thinking an earthworm is an earthworm is an earthworm, right? Not knowing any difference, so moving them. And then also anglers improperly disposing of worms can be partly why. So, why are these worse than the European earthworm? It's really important for me to note for y'all, PSA moment, no earthworms are native to the United States. All of them were wiped out in the last ice age. Colonists brought the European lumbricus species, the wriggler species, over. They are very good in our agricultural and garden settings. However, our forest and natural settings do not need earthworms. They have adapted for not having them. So that's a PSA in general. Keep earthworms in your garden and dispose of any jumping worms. So why are jumping worms worse? Why am I calling European earthworms just that, right? They're not invasive, and I'm calling these ones invasive. Well, jumping worms do not nutrient cycle. They completely degrade all nutrients. They inhibit seed germination because they deprive the soil of so many nutrients, and they mature twice as fast as our European earthworms. So they create more worms quicker. So because they consume the organic matter in the upper layers of the topsoil, the soil's left without the ability to hold moisture, deliver nutrients to plants, and it causes erosion. I mean, plants can just get pulled out. Your soil will look dry, and a lot of these circles here, that's a lot of egg casings as well. So their digestion changes the appearance of the soil in general. You want to look for coffee ground soil, and then that can be a sign that you might have something wrong going underneath. So, do you have an area of your garden or yard where the soil is just always weird, a little dry, and then the worms just aren't quite right? So, there is a way to tell the difference between the European earthworms and the jumping worms. So, the way to tell the difference is behavior. Asian jumping worms, they're known to more thrash and jump around. Now, not all of them do, right? Not all humans have curly hair, right? So we can't say that that's something. So not all jumping worms will thrash around, but oftentimes they do not undulate like a normal earthworm. They kind of look like more like an angry snake when you're disturbing them. So there's going to be a weird behavior. Their texture's going to look weird. They're going to look sleek and smooth. They're not really going to look like slimy and floppy like you're used to. And then there is an anatomical feature on all earthworms that helps us tell the difference. It's the clitellum. So European earthworms here on the right with the yellow text. Asian jumping worms, different Amynthus species, are here on the left. We've got the Amynthus here and the European earthworm here. So the clitellum is this part right here. On the European earthworm, it's like a saddle. It is raised. It is flesh colored. It is mid-body, and it doesn't go all the way around. So much like a saddle sits on a horse. The clitellum on our Asian jumping worm is flush. It's the same level as the body. It is closer to the head. It's more like a choker, a collar, if you will, like a necklace, because it goes all the way around, and oftentimes it is white. Not all the times. Oh, sorry. Not all the time. Sometimes, oh, stop it. Sometimes the worm is full and that clitellum might be a little dirt colored, but what you'll notice is it's going to be flush with the body, closer to the head, and also those other traits as well, right? Your soil doesn't look so good. See, look at that soil behind them. That's all just degraded soil. So some local invasive plants and pests. These are not necessarily species that we want you to report about. We definitely want you to identify and remove. And then your local invasives task force does a lot of work on that as well. So the first one is the air potato. This is in the family yam, the yam family. It's a perennial deciduous vine, so it loses its leaves often. It's native to tropical Africa, Asia, and Australia. And it's a high climbing vine, so it's another one of those fuel ladders. It can smother and take over, smothering the native plants, exacerbate wildfires, but it does have very unique shaped leaves. It has heart-shaped leaves that are 8 inches long, so they're a very how you doing. And they have prominent veins that meet at that base, and then they do have a tuber or a potato. There are some native lookalikes. So there is a native squash. It's the same it's the same genus, Dioscorea. Dioscorea. It'll look just like this, but it will not have tubers and it will not continually take over an area. And then greenbrier can look like a small air potato vine starting off, but it has thorns and it just doesn't have the heart shape leaf in the end. It's more round. So air potatoes, they're called this because they are like potatoes dangling in the air. So they can get up to 6 inches in diameter. And this is an air potato vine completely covering a beautiful old pine tree along with some Mustang grape. So the invasive species task force in your area does a lot of removal of this species, which is greatly appreciated. They also do a lot of other things too. Because of all of the air potato removal, we were able to connect them with the USDA APHIS, and APHIS was able to do some air potato biocontrol release in the area. They're not, I don't think they're breeding biocontrols for that area anymore, but they had successful air potato beetle releases. Those air potato beetles were also eating Chinese tallow, which is beautiful. They do work on tallow removal and here bamboo removal. So this task force always just warms my heart because they're just out there getting at it because it is not hard. I mean, it is hard work and it is important work, but it's repetitive work, and it's just so important that they're out there and removing. So there are some invasive plants that are illegal. There are some illegal plants. So I always like to take a moment to touch on those because if you see anywhere selling any of these illegal plants, please send me an email. My email address is arm001@shsu.edu. It'll show up at the end as well. But we want to report nurseries selling these plants. We are not a legal entity, but Texas Department of Ag sure is. And so they can follow up and handle it. So if they're selling things like tallow, camel thorn, giant reed, kudzu, torpedo grass, water lettuce, Brazilian pepper tree, if they're selling any of these species, please contact us. There's literally hundreds of other species they could be selling besides the actually illegal ones. So tallow tree, this is one of those prohibited species. It's one of those that also, it's been called Benjamin Franklin's tree because it was introduced during the colonial times. That part, I don't know if Ben Franklin did it, but it was introduced and it was thought to be like the next, beeswax. Tallow seed oil was going to take over everything. However, that's not what happened, and it is a very invasive tree. It has allelopathic effects, so it changes the environmental conditions around it to its benefit. Its seeds have a lot of tannins that last in the soil and the water, and the tannins will change the pH to where it will inhibit the growth of frogs and other aquatic vertebrates. And it can resprout from roots, especially if you just cut it. I mean, I've seen downed tallows that are then resprouting from the downed trunk. So it can be a shrub, but oftentimes it grows into a tree. It says up to 60 feet tree if tall. It could easily get larger, but The leaves are very identifiable. They are kite-shaped. We do not have many tree leaves that look anything like this. A redbud might come close, but kite-shaped, and you'll notice they are the leaves that change color in the fall. So it's very easy to spot them in Texas. Female flowers and male flowers can be on the same end. So their flowers are catkins, right? So kind of like an oak tree, they have the catkins that then turn into these three-lobed fruit that become popcorn white waxy seeds, and then the black shells are full of tannins, and that's what can really affect pH and all of that, inhibiting growth of other plants and animals around them. The other species is Chinaberry. Right now, the seeds are out, so it'll be really identifiable. It's another one of those brought in the mid 1800s, popular shade tree in the South. So obviously, it's everywhere in our area. It does the same thing. It creates small monocultures. However, unlike the tallow tree, the Chinaberry serves no benefit to pollinators. The flowers are not utilized by bees or butterflies. It also has allelopathic effects. All parts of it, especially the fruit, are poisonous. So nothing's eating it, and it's especially poisonous to mammals like us and our pets. And it's resistant to native insects, and many biocontrols have not been useful. So this is also another tree that can just grow and grow and grow. It does have these alternate bipinnately compound leaflets that get up to about 2 feet. So those are pretty noticeable. The flowers have already passed. There are these pretty little flowers that no pollinator goes to, so why bother? And then they have hundreds of hard yellow marble stalked berries. These berries will be what's out right now. And we strongly recommend to not remove them. If you're removing them, please bag up the seeds. Please, please, please. And then to clear out the seed bank underneath. Another pest that's widespread in the area is the hammerhead flatworm. The reason this one's called invasive is because it's a predator of earthworms. Now I know I just talked about how no earthworms are native, but European earthworms provide a benefit, right? Just like we don't like the murder hornet because it kills honeybees. Well, honeybees aren't native either, but they provide good. So earthworms provide good. We don't want something that eats our earthworms that are minding their own business in the garden areas. So these are one of those. It's very identifiable. We have nothing that looks like that. It's called a hammerhead flatworm because it is a flat worm with a hammerhead shaped head. It can squeeze into really weird areas, so you might find it stuck on your dog's leg, in your shower, on a tree, who knows, oftentimes in your compost piles. But please just remove it. You can spray it with vinegar if you don't want to touch it, or salt. It does degrade quickly. We just want you to kill it if you see it. The black velvet leatherleaf slug. So this I think is the final pest of the day. Wait, no, I've got a couple more to touch on with you, but we're moving right along. So the black velvet leatherleaf slug is native to South America. It has slowly migrated up through Central America into Mexico, and that's more than likely how it also got here in Texas because we have some historical reports of it being in the Rio Grande Valley. And initially, we knew it to be in the San Antonio area, and then one day, one of my collaborators at Lamar State University in Orange said, "Hey, I found this black velvet leatherleaf slug, and we knew it to be in Alabama, but," he's like, "I'm over here in Orange, and we only knew it to be in Bear and the Rio Grande Valley." And that's when we realized, oh no, this might be more widespread than we thought. It's a very unique looking organism. Let's ask the citizens to report it. And because of citizens over, the past 8 years, we've been able to fill in that it's documented in over 50 Texas counties. And we've been able to do some parasite studies, and we have documented that it is carrying angiostrongylus parasites. So like the apple snail, it carries a similar parasite that can infect the gut. And so that's why we strongly encourage, if you see these slugs, please kill them. Remove them, place them in an airtight container, salt and vinegar, or you can freeze them, or you can use slug bait. Just please use natural slug bait if you have pets. The parasite is preventable. So just like the parasite that the apple snail, these angiostrongylus parasites are preventable. The way that they infect us or our pets are if we eat the parasite. So since we are not inclined to eat slugs and snails here in the United States, we're not likely to get these. However, there are other ways for it to get into our system. If you touch a slug and then you touch your mouth, right? Slimy in mouth, the parasite could be in that slime. So please wash your hands before touching your mouth. Do not keep slugs, snails as pets. As a parasitologist, please don't. They're full of so many kinds of worms. And then if you have a garden, fruits and vegetables, please just wash them before you eat them. That could wash off any where parasite worms could be on. It's important to note if you have the slug, it does not guarantee you have the parasite. It's just highly likely. So please just wash everything. And a simple vegetable wash is all you need to do. A simple wash with soap and water is all you need to do. It is very preventable. It's just something we need to be aware of. So the final couple of items that I'll talk to you about is ways you can save your citrus. And I had these awesome mailers I was going to hand out to y'all so you could contact me, but c'est la vie. So the Asian citrus psyllid is a psyllid, which is a phloem feeding insect. So this is one of those true bugs as well. It's a psyllid that feeds on citrus that is native to Asia. This is one of those that it was found in Florida in 1998 at citrus plants off of the front yard. It's really important to note with this insect, it is not a good flyer. It is not a good flyer. Its spread is directly linked to humans moving host plants like citrus trees around. So the adult can be seen by the eye. The larvae kind of look like aphids, but they're flat and they have these white waxy secretions versus that honeydew. They have this white waxiness that comes out, and that is identifiable. So this insect is able to spread citrus greening, which is a disease that kills citrus trees, ruins the fruit, and is why there are citrus quarantines in our area. Citrus greening is also from Southeast Asia, was also detected in Florida, and has been present in Texas since 2012. These are the quarantined counties in Texas. So you can see in the Houston area, we have Brazoria, Galveston, Fort Bend, Harrison, Montgomery counties. So you might have heard me speak at Montgomery plant sales before, or we try to speak at other plant sales. This is why you're supposed to buy citrus in your area and you're not supposed to move it in or out. You will be spreading the insect. It does not fly. If you move it in or out of the county, you're literally giving it a free ride. And since we know the psyllid and the disease to be in these areas, we're trying to keep it localized. So the Asian citrus psyllid, here are adults and larvae. You can see that with your naked eye. You can see those white waxy secretions. If anything, those secretions will kind of make it look like a dusting is happening over the plant. So you're just going to kind of notice, something doesn't seem quite right. And there are some weird bugs on my citrus. If left too long and if the psyllid starts spreading citrus greening, what happens is it starts destroying the chlorophyll production. So it starts yellowing the leaves, causing this blotchy appearance. However, blotchy mottled leaves could also be a sign of nutrient deficiencies. But you can kind of confirm that you have citrus greening if you have premature fruit drops, misshapen fruit, sour fruit, fruit with way too many seeds in it, right? Cannot be consumed. That is the economic impact of citrus greening as well. It kills the tree, it ruins its fruit, and the tree has to be destroyed in the end. So we are doing public outreach. That's why I have mailers to send to y'all or give out to y'all to give out to your friends. So if you or any of your friends in the area or like the surrounding 10 counties we have public outreach where we're setting up traps for citrusilids. So if you want to help us by letting us set up a trap for a couple of months at one of your trees, we can do that. We can also do in-field starch testing if you might suspect that you have citrus greening, and then we can always take that sample back to our lab and run it as well. And we do provide citrus specific workshops. So if you are interested in hosting that in the area, please contact me and we can get either of that scheduled. So management, it's not easy. If it was easy, I'd have a different job. We wouldn't be talking about invasive species. So the main theory behind it is perseverance, determination, vigilance, retreating. Retreating is the main aspect of managing invasive plants or pests. Oftentimes, you're going to need an integrated pest management. We want you to treat early, treat often, plant natives. Oftentimes you will need to use a mechanical and chemical combined, and then to monitor and the seed bank. So a couple of mechanical options. Hand pulling is always effective if the tree is small enough. You also have weed wrenching. That's a lot better for those more medium size plants that are harder. You can't hand pull them up. But you don't necessarily, you want to get the roots out, so that can be very effective. Mowing and grazing can be effective. However, please look at our website. Some plants spread faster the more you mow them. So that's important to look up to make sure that you're not exacerbating it. Prescribed fire, extremely useful. Not highly useful in the woodlands area, but if you have any rangelands that you're having problems with, prescribed fire, very effective. And then if you have dense thickets of trees where you can't exactly like get a chainsaw in or anything like that, tree girdling has shown to be very effective. Not just on, problematic or trees that may be infected, but also privet, Chinese tallow. Cliff Tylik has some amazing YouTube videos. He's like the self-proclaimed privet girdler of Texas. And I mean, he's cleared acres on his own. It's just important that if you are going to girdle a tree with a bark remover here, you don't need to go too deep. You just need to go to that second inner bark layer that then, I mean, it's like imagine ours. You just kind of need to get that skin to get the blood exposed. You don't need to go all the way down to the bone, right? So that's the same with the tree. You just need to get that bark so then that phloem area is exposed, and basically you're drying the tree out. You're girdling the tree. You're stopping the flow of nutrients. So Cliff Tylik down there, Clifftylick. He's on YouTube. Chemical, please always follow labels and directions. Do not overuse, only when needed. And please, please, please never use when the trees are flowering. And I'll show you when you shouldn't be using it, because some strategies you may not think about it. So cut and treat, this is one of my favorites because I will literally take a paintbrush and paint the stump because I am trying to limit spray. So cut and treat is most effective. It's a timely thing. You have to cut it and treat it within minutes of each other. So I always recommend having someone going and cutting and someone behind with a paintbrush or a sprayer spraying, because trees will instantly start trying to heal themselves. The longer that you wait to apply that herbicide, the less that will be absorbed, the more likely you'll have to do it again and re-expose the area to those chemicals. So it's really important, the timeliness of applying herbicides after you cut when you're trying to treat an area. Direct foliar spray, sometimes you're not able to cut and treat, so spraying the leaves is very effective. I like to recommend using something as simple as a milk gallon to help focus your spray, right? Limiting how widespread it's going. However, I hate this picture. It almost looks like he is spraying a flowering plant, which you shouldn't be doing at all. So the reason you shouldn't be spraying the flowering plant is usually pretty obvious, especially to a group like y'all. Pollinators will then interact with the herbicide. it's a chemical. Chemicals aren't good for most bugs. Herbicides aren't good for us, so they're not going to be good for bugs. So it's really important to apply these midsummer to fall, but also think about rainy periods as well. And also, if the plant flowers in the fall, then don't apply that during the fall. So just think about pollinators and washout when you're applying this. But also, basal spray is another time to be thinking about pollinators. So this is like foliar spray, but you're spraying the base of the tree. This works better on younger trees whose bark isn't as rough and corky and thick. And it's where you're spraying the herbicide to the lower foot of the tree. However, some studies have shown, the herbicide gets into the phloem and the xylem. Phloem and xylem are what are used to create the nectar for the flowers. So again, you don't want to be doing basal spray when the tree is flowering because herbicides could be getting into those flowers. Now, it's definitely not going to be as concentrated as when you're spraying the leaves, but it's just definitely something to be aware of. You don't want to spray this when it's going to rain, and you don't want to spray this when the tree is flowering because the herbicide could get integrated into that. And that's also important with stem injection. So this is kind of like cut and treat meets basal spray. So this is where you like take a little axe and you make hacks around the base and you inject herbicide. So that blue spray, you're putting the herbicide in the cuts. This is the same thing. Definitely more so than basal spray. Definitely be aware of, do not apply this when it's a raining event or flowering. Again, the herbicide is entering the circulatory system and we don't want it to affect the nectar of the flowering plants. But all of these are very effective ways and ways that you can apply herbicide in a more controlled setting. But what's really important is clear that seed bank. Don't just cut them down. A lot of those seeds last up to 5-10 years. Oh, the tree of heaven produces 300,000 in a year, right? You've got to clean out the seeds and then replace with natives. Because if you just leave that area vacant, more invasives are likely to get there. So just remember some prevention of invasive plants. It's not always about the plant itself being invasive. It could be what pest would call that plant home, right? So think about the plants that you have in your yard and how that could be inviting other invasive species. This is for any tree destroyed by any bark beetle, native or invasive. Native or invasive. If your tree has been killed by bark beetles, mulch it immediately and bag it. Do not keep it for firewood. It has bark beetles. Do not share it with neighbors. It has bark beetles. I had one person who attended a workshop and he said he got some, a neighbor's tree fell downed and they cut it up and they shared the oak wood with them and they kept it for firewood. And then their oak tree started getting sick and now their oak has bark beetles. And it's like, well, did you ask your neighbor how its tree died? No, it's like you bought beetles on your property and now your oaks are dying, right? So just remove any and just keep on removing. I wanted to share these slides because I do talk about this group all the time. So we have a biannual Brazilian pepper tree removal that Texas Invasives supports. We're slowly clearing acres and acres of it in Port Aransas. The Woodlands Task Force clearing acres and acres of air potato and bamboo all the time. The Alamo Master Gardeners have removed apple snails. And what's really fun, I believe some of your master naturalists, they already contacted me because they're getting trained by the San Antonio River Authority on how to properly dispose of the apple snails. They reached out to me. I told them it's perfectly legal what they're doing. Parks and Wildlife has changed their regulations to now where anybody can dispose of them. So keep in mind, they're cleared for some woodlands waterways, from what I understand. So snail removal is something that could get involved in, which that's me. I always appreciate just remove as much as you can. It's something that's applied by even Texas Parks and Wildlife. So the final thing to kind of touch on before we can get to some questions is just, I've been talking about reporting them. So How do you report them? These are all the species you listened to me talk to you today. Isn't that impressive? Look at that. We covered a lot of species, and many of them were sentinel pest species, species that we want you to report to us if you even suspect it could be that species. So that was the apple snail, the giant African snail, emerald ash borer, spotted lanternfly, red bay ambrosia beetle, Japanese climbing fern, Asian jumping worm, citrus greening disease, Asian citrus psyllid. We were all over the place. And so, why do we ask you to report directly to Texas Invasives? Why do we have these alerts? Well, if we talk about chronologically, Texas Invasives was created in about 2007, which was several years before iNaturalist even existed. So, we've had long-standing direct report systems with our state and federal partners since then. We can send the information to them directly. We are one of those established connections. While do not get me wrong, iNaturalist is a wonderful resource that we're starting to utilize more, and we're trying to share our information with them. However, it is time consuming to go and search through there. So if you could take time to report to us and report to iNaturalist, that would really be helpful, because we can instantly get it over to Parks and Wildlife or APHIS or the Forest Service as needed. So to report those sentinel pests again, and anytime you see this QR code, you can just scan it real quick. That's just our little link tree kind of showing quick links to the things I'm talking about, like our homepage or signing up for the iWire or learning more about our citrus initiative. So this is our homepage. Those are sentinel pests. We want you to report them. They're right there on the homepage. If you want to learn about any other species, you just go right there to our invasives database. You can click Take Action, Report It. That's another way to view the Sentinel Pest list. Or you can, again, go to the QR code. You could go to Linktree/Texas Invasives if that's your jam, or download our mobile app. There are many ways that you could be reporting it to us. Once you decide you're going to report an organism to us that's a pest, sentinel pest, this is the form that pops up. It's really simple. At minimum, we need your name, email, a picture of the organism, and a location of where you spotted it. We need that so we can reply to you, confirm or deny what you're seeing, and log it for our records as well, for our distributional records. So please just take time to fill that out, and do not attach a huge picture. The website is old, so please try to keep the picture around 2 megabytes. I know that sounds impossible nowadays. And we're hoping to switch platforms, but oh man, I've been trying for several years. Okay, so just tips for taking pictures, contrasting background. Close-ups is best, right? Like this. Oh, what a beautiful red streaked leafhopper. Now he's an insect photographer. I do not expect this kind of quality. I just expect something in focus, right? Like I'm pretty sure that's a China berry, that I'm more certain of what they're wanting me to identify. And this is nice because I can see the leaves, the berries, right? That's all giving proportion to size. That's all helpful. Good contrast. Poor contrast. Not good. Blurry. Again, I'm sure it's China berry, but you're sending us stuff for confirmation. So we have to have a certain amount of confidence when sending this or confirming things. And as always, please remember to stay informed with our monthly iWire. You can sign up right there. See that Take Action? You got the Report It, or it's right there to keep informed. And that way you can always think about invasives all the time, like I do. So hopefully I've left some time for questions. These are just a few of those websites that I was talking to you about. So always remember, you can go to our websites for information and management strategies. If you have sentinel pest to report, that is through texasinvasives.org. If you are interested in citrus sampling, please, 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 or want a citrus specific workshop, please contact me at my personal email, arm001@shsu.edu. And if you have other quandaries or things, you can always email our shared inbox at invasives@shsu.edu. And with that, I can take questions.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And if you have any documents that you want us to pass out to the class, feel free to email them to us. We also are fortunate to have Terry MacArthur
Yes.
from the Woodlands Township in the chat, and she's presenting with us soon again. And we have Lisa Houston, who's our Heartwood coordinator for the Invasives Task Force and the president of the Heartwood chapter in the chat too, sharing some good information and for how to get involved. So hopefully we'll have a lot more recruits here. I did see a question from Ruth. What herbicide do you recommend?
So they are listed on our website. I know there's been a lot of talk about glyphosate and things like that. I mean, all herbicides are chemicals, so it is important to just wear PPE. But triclopyr, glyphosate, those can be really effective. But our website will list certain recipes where some plants might respond better, but triclopyr and glyphosate definitely tend to be useful. It's just if you're in an aquatic setting, please use a water safe herbicide if you're in that kind of area, which is not I forget which one it is, but not the same as terrestrial herbicides for sure.
Okay, great. And then Christine requested to see the slide that has the photo tips for reporting.
Oh, yes. So it's really one pic. Yeah, it's just that one picture can be submitted when you're sending the report. So just having it in focused, contrasting background and making sure that you're showing characteristics that help us identify it. So, you know, if it's an apple snail, pink eggs are always super helpful, right? Things like that.
Okay, Jessica asks about the brown anole. Are they a problem?
Yes. Yes, they are a problem. They are invasive. Um, And actually, it was last week, one of y'all, their sons are like champions at catching the animals and then feeding them to their chickens, which I have absolutely no problem with. Yes, they are a problem. So they are more aggressive than our green animals. Originally, they'll kind of partition the habitat where one stays more in the tree and one stays more on the ground, but the brown animal is just more aggressive. They will literally eat green animal eggs. So they then start taking over an area. And so, I mean, catching and catching and killing them is what we recommend, but that is a lot harder to do. And you can't just put some generic bait out there because it would harm our green animals.
And that was actually Jessica said that that's her son that does that.
Yes,
So makes
Jessica,
sense.
yes. A champ. I mean, she showed me like a handful of them. I was like, I wish we all had those skills. I think we all just have to be like nimble, you know, like 5 to 10-year-olds to be able to catch them.
Yeah, channel our inner children.
Yes.
Um, so Jessica asks, to dispose of the apple snail, should we bag and trash them as well?
Yes, so I recommend also the little smash, if you can, but that is only that can be gross. So something that I learned at the LaPorte Park system. So yeah, you know those mound tampers for the baseball mounds. If you get a 5-gallon bucket of apple snails and then you tamper them down and then you dump that into the bag, but if you're not up for smashing, which I get, because I'm just trying in the end, I'm kind of trying to ensure a quick death for them, right? I'm trying to ensure. But yes, you absolutely must double bag the apple snail adults before disposal. And the eggs, everything, just yes, bag them before disposal because they can just crawl out and move on.
Okay. Mish wants to know, are there slugs similar to the velvet leather leaf slug?
Great question. I didn't touch on that. No, we don't have any native slug that looks like that at all. So if you see a black slug, and it'll look matte, right? It'll look velvety as opposed to slimy. That's your invasive one. Yeah, we do not have any plain black slugs in this area. Actually, I don't know if I've ever seen a native slug. Most of the slugs that we see are invasive. So you've got, and so please check that out on our invasives database because they all spread parasites. So I just strongly discourage slugs in the area. But that's a great question. There are none that look like that one.
All right. And then shout out to Tom, Philpott, and Diana. They're doing the BLC Invasives team. They're starting it. So they'll be sharing more information with us soon. Question about European honeybees. Do they cause a decline of native bee populations?
No, they haven't. So they're considered naturalized because they've added. They don't necessarily outcompete our native bee populations. There still seems to be a good amount of native bees. Where honeybees get invasive is when they've been hybridized with the African species, and that species, the Africanized honeybee, is more aggressive, will compete with native bees and kind of take over habitats. But our European honeybee really does, it plays well with others, and that's why we call it naturalized.
Okay, another question from Gretchen. She wants to know about the poisonous qualities of Nandina berries to wildlife. If you have any comment on that.
Any comments off the top of my head? I believe those are ones that aren't good for birds. I'm trying to remember because there's a lot of poisonous berries when you get into the invasives, because the bright berries is partly why we have them as ornamentals, but that also is what makes them problematic. So I believe those berries are toxic to birds, but I'm not 100% sure. And that is one of those species. Nandina is an invasive. We do encourage you to remove it. However, it is almost impossible to find management information. So go to our website, because everything on the internet will talk about how to help your Nandina grow. And that's not what I want.
Um, let's see. Are there any invasive fungi?
Oh yeah. So laurel wilt is a fungus. It's a plant pathogen fungus. Oak wilt is a fungus. You've got the citrus skinning is a bacteria, but the white-nosed fungus of bats, that's an invasive fungus as well. There's a lot. Fungi tend to be more under our plant pathogen realm, is when a lot more fungi get involved in things. So there is on our tsusinvasives.org, there is a parasite and diseases section that will talk about different parasites and bacteria and fungi that are invasive and how they're spread, because oftentimes they're spread through insects and other things.
All right, we've had a request from Terry to talk about new trapping volunteer opportunities. If you have any, or know any off the top of your head or have any available.
Yes, so I touched a little bit. We do have a couple of opportunities for the red bay ambrosia beetle. So that's if you have any red bay or avocado in your area. We need to set up about 2 or 3 additionally through my grad student, but we also have an Asian defoliator and a oak and pine beetle survey happening right now as well. That will be going from June to October. We'll be setting up either those black funnel traps I was showing you, or variations of those yellow sticky traps to catch either beetles or moths. We only need about 4 locations in the county per. So if you have a pine or oak tree or avocado or citrus tree, because we have the citrus psyllid sampling as well. So please contact me and we could coordinate. We do have locations for some of our beetle surveys already located, but if you don't mind somebody walking on your property about every 3 weeks in the middle of the day to check beetles, and then we can always give you a summary of some of the species we find at your location as well. So ideally, we would want a tree that is easily accessible, because we don't want you to have to take time out of your day to let us on your property, because also we're field biologists. We cannot predict where we're going to be at all times. So we can give you a date range, but we cannot guarantee. We're kind of worse than the cable company in that sense. But please, please send me an email. We do want to get more citizens involved. And this also applies to if you have our beetle and moth surveys are throughout East Texas. So if you have anybody, again, in Montgomery or the surrounding 10 counties that have oak, pine, citrus, avocado, or red bay trees, please contact us, and we'd love to see if we can coordinate some trapping. And if you're also so inclined, we can show you how to check the traps, and you can always visit us up in our lab if you want to bring samples to us. But, you know, at most, we just need a tree that you'll allow us to check.
Thank you. Tom, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I don't think so. We're just real fast. We're getting with the BLC to handle the herbicide the proper way, which we're going about this exactly by the book with the glyphosate and things like that. We are going to be girdling a lot more than using herbicide, but we do some techniques that Ashley touched upon with the big tallow, to where we take a spade bit, drill straight into the tree, and then very strategically tactically put that herbicide straight in with a little spray, or with a little tube basically. So it goes right in, and we've just had a massive amount of success on killing the tallow on the preserves. It's been unbelievable. So, and privet is my favorite to pull. So hopefully we'll see some of it.
I love that. Oh, and that does remind me, I have a tallow management does tend to be a lot more effective in the fall for a lot of just people in general. It is a lot more effective in the fall. But yeah, I love what the Philpotts are doing, and the BLC does a lot of great work.
Okay, I don't see any other questions in the chat. If anyone has any questions, I think you can unmute yourselves and ask. Oh, wait, let's see. Is there a slug attractant for easy removal?
A slug attract. So there are molluscicides that so if you want to do like an all natural kind of way, they say beer, it's 50-50. It's the yeast that attracts them. What I've heard to be a lot more effective is say you're making bread, right? Just the dough, right? It's the yeast and the water and the flour, and you just kind of let it rise, and then you stick some yeasty bread outside, and that can attract the slugs for then you to remove them. Or you can put the yeasty dough in some beer, and the beer is so that they go in and drown in it. But there are some, if you want to do organic, so you want slug bait that does not have, is it iron phosphate? You want organic slug bait if you have cats or dogs around, because normal slug bait is toxic to other vertebrate animals, but organic slug bait that has a different chemical compound, that's not going to be toxic to your cats and your dogs, but you don't want to always have it around either. It is a toxin, but there are slug baits that can attract and kill slugs. There's not anything that does that for the flatworms though, but there is something that does that for slugs.
That's fascinating about the bread and the beer. I didn't know that. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have. Thank you so much. There's a lot of thanks for you in the chat. Everybody really appreciates it, and we really have loved having you here the last few weeks.
All right. Thank you all.
All right. Well, have a good one, everyone. If you have any questions, message the training committee, or you can message me directly. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend. Stay dry.